signs of a soul ripening toward the Buddha's path. What if the path to the Buddha had already begun in you long before you ever knew how to name it? Sometimes the Buddha's path begins not with a ceremony, not with a robe, not with a Dharma name whispered before an altar, but with a quiet trembling in the heart that no one else can see. A person may still be living an ordinary life, waking early for work, caring for family, answering messages, paying bills, carrying worries, chasing small ambitions, and trying to appear fine in a world full of noise. Yet somewhere beneath all of that, there is an unseen pull toward compassion, toward truth, toward something clean and peaceful that worldly success cannot provide. They may not have taken refuge formally, may not yet understand scriptures, may not even know how to sit properly in meditation, but their heart has already begun leaning in the direction of awakening. And this is where the first sign of wholesome roots quietly reveals itself. Before the lips ever recite a vow, the soul may already be turning toward the triple gem. Imagine someone walking through a busy city after a long day. The streets are loud, motorbikes passing, phones ringing, shops glowing, conversations rising and fading like waves. Their mind is full of unfinished duties, old regrets, and questions they cannot share with anyone. Then, on the corner of a familiar road, they pass a small temple gate. Perhaps they have passed it many times before, but today something makes them slow down. They notice the incense smoke drifting softly into the evening air. They see a Buddha image sitting in silence beyond the courtyard. They hear faint chanting from inside, not loud, not dramatic, but strangely steady. And for a few seconds their heart becomes quiet. They may not step inside. They may continue walking. They may even laugh at themselves and think, "Why did that affect me?" But something has already happened. In the middle of an ordinary life, a door within them has opened just a little. This is often how the calling begins, not as thunder, not as a miracle, not as a voice from the sky. It begins as a gentle disturbance in the middle of daily life, a feeling that the world, though full of pleasures and plans, is somehow not enough. It is the feeling of sitting among friends, surrounded by laughter, yet quietly wondering why the heart still feels lonely. It is the feeling of achieving something long desired, only to discover that the satisfaction fades sooner than expected. It is the uneasiness that comes after harsh words, the ache of seeing suffering, the tenderness that appears when one witnesses old age, sickness, separation, or death. These moments may look small from the outside, but inside, they can become turning points. A person with wholesome roots may not immediately call this feeling spiritual. They may only know that they are tired of living on the surface. They are tired of pretending that busyness is peace. They are tired of anger, comparison, jealousy, and the endless hunger to be seen, praised, and proven right. Somewhere in them, a quiet question repeats again and again. What is the right way to live? Not merely how to earn more, not merely how to be admired, not merely how to win, but how to live so that the heart is not ashamed of itself. How to live so that one brings less harm into the world. How to live so that when the night becomes still, one can meet oneself without fear. That question itself is precious. In Buddhism, we often speak of taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. To take refuge is a conscious step. It is to turn toward the Buddha as the awakened one, toward the Dharma as the teaching that leads out of suffering, and toward the Sangha as the noble community that preserves and embodies the path. It is not simply a ritual. It is not merely joining a religion by name. At its deepest level, taking refuge means recognizing that the ordinary habits of the untrained mind cannot be our final shelter. Wealth cannot protect us from impermanence. Praise cannot protect us from loneliness. Power cannot protect us from old age. Distraction cannot protect us from death. So we look for a refuge that is not built on illusion. But the seed of refuge can sprout long before formal vow is spoken, before a person kneels, before the triple gem, There may already be a kneeling inside the heart. Before the hands join together in reverence, there may already be humility growing in silence. Before one understands the Four Noble Truths, one may already feel the truth of suffering. Before one studies compassion, one may already be unable to bear the pain of others. Before one receives a Dharma name, one may already feel that some older, wiser part of the heart is calling them home. This is why we should not measure someone's connection to the Dharma only by outer signs. Some people have never shaved their heads, never worn a robe, never attended a retreat, never memorized a sutra. Yet, when they hear a simple teaching about kindness, their eyes become wet. When they hear that anger burns the one who carries it, something in them immediately understands. When they hear that all things are impermanent, they do not argue, they become quiet, because life has already taught them this. When they see a monk or nun walking calmly, eating simply, speaking gently, they feel respect arise without effort. Not because someone told them to respect, but because their own heart recognizes a fragrance it has been searching for. Wholesome roots are not always dramatic. Sometimes they appear as a refusal to become cruel, even in a cruel world. Sometimes they appear as discomfort after speaking badly of someone. Sometimes they appear as a deep sensitivity to suffering, a tenderness that others may call weakness. Sometimes they appear as an attraction to sacred images, old temples, incense, chanting, scriptures, or quiet places. Sometimes they appear as a strange feeling of familiarity, as if the Dharma is not something entirely new, but something remembered. Perhaps you have felt this before. Perhaps there was a time when you entered a temple without expecting anything. Maybe you came because of a family event, a festival, a funeral, or simply because someone invited you. At first, you were just another visitor. You looked around, unsure of what to do with your hands, unsure how long to bow, unsure whether you belonged there. But then your eyes met the face of the Buddha image. The face was still, gentle, neither smiling in a worldly way nor distant in a cold way. It was a presence beyond judgment, and in that moment, something in you softened. You may have felt peaceful without knowing why. You may have wanted to stay a little longer. You may have found yourself speaking more quietly. The burdens you carried did not disappear, but they became less heavy for a moment. You did not receive a long teaching. No one explained philosophy to you. Yet in the silence of that sacred space, your heart tasted a different way of being. That taste is not small. That taste can become the beginning of a lifetime's path, or perhaps your first turning came through a teaching. Maybe you heard a monk speak on a video late at night when you could not sleep. You were not searching for enlightenment. You were only tired, confused, wounded, or restless. But then a sentence reached you. It may have been something simple: everything that arises will pass away. Or, hatred never ends through hatred. Or, if you understand suffering, compassion will be born. Suddenly, those words did not feel like information. They felt like medicine. They entered exactly where life had hurt you. And after listening, even if nothing outside changed, something inside stood still and breathed. This too is a sign. There are people who can hear profound teachings and feel nothing. That is not a reason to judge them. Every seed ripens in its own season. But when your heart trembles before truth, when you feel gratitude for a teaching that exposes your illusions, yet comforts your pain, then perhaps the Dharma is already touching a root within you. The teaching does not force itself upon the heart, it only shines. And if there is a seed ready in the soil, that seed begins to stir. Still, this calling should be honored gently. It should not be forced, exaggerated, or turned into spiritual pride. To feel drawn toward the Buddha's path does not mean one is already holy. It does not mean one is better than others. It does not mean one must immediately abandon all worldly responsibilities, or pretend to be beyond desire, anger, or confusion. The beginning of the path is often humble. We are still human. We still make mistakes. We still get irritated. We still cling to what hurts us. But now, something in us knows there is another way, that knowing is delicate. If we handle it with pressure, it may become anxiety. If we turn it into identity, it may become ego. But if we honor it with sincerity, it becomes faith. Not blind faith, not loud faith, not faith that attacks others, but a quiet confidence that goodness is worth cultivating, that the mind can be trained, that suffering can be understood, and that awakening is not merely a story from ancient times. A person may live for years in this in-between place, not yet formally committed, yet no longer fully at home in a life of distraction. They may continue working, raising children, studying, building a future, caring for parents, meeting friends and fulfilling duties. But now, from time to time, they search for Dharma talks. They pause when they see a Buddhist book. They feel moved by stories of the Buddha's compassion. They become curious about meditation. They begin to ask whether their choices create peace or suffering. They notice their anger more quickly. They regret harsh speech more deeply. They feel drawn to simplicity, even if they cannot yet live simply. The world still pulls them outward, but the Dharma has begun to call them inward. And the beautiful thing is that this inner calling does not need an audience. No one else may know. Your family may not understand. Your friends may think it is just a phase. You may not even have the words to explain it. But in the quiet room of your own heart, you know there is a difference between the life you have been living and the life you are being invited to live. The Buddha's path does not always begin with certainty. Sometimes it begins with longing. Sometimes it begins with exhaustion. Sometimes it begins with tears no one sees. Sometimes it begins with the simple wish, may I become kinder, may I stop harming myself and others. May I understand why I suffer. May I find peace that does not depend on everything going my way. Such wishes are not ordinary. They are the fragrance of wholesome roots. If you look back carefully, you may find that the path has been touching your life for a long time. Perhaps it touched you through your grandmother's prayer beads, moving slowly through her fingers. Perhaps through the sight of someone bowing with complete sincerity. Perhaps through a funeral when impermanence became too real to ignore. Perhaps through a moment when you forgave someone and felt your own heart released. Perhaps through a period of deep suffering when everything you trusted collapsed, and yet from the ruins arose a longing for truth. The Dharma often enters through cracks. Where pride is cracked, humility can enter. Where certainty is cracked, wisdom can enter. Where selfishness is cracked, compassion can enter. Where the illusion of control is cracked, refuge can enter. This is why painful experiences, though never pleasant, can become sacred turning points. They show us that the world cannot be held tightly forever. They show us that the heart must learn a deeper kind of freedom. So if you have not yet taken refuge, but you find yourself drawn toward the Buddha, do not dismiss it. Do not mock your own tenderness. Do not say, I am not good enough, or I do not know enough, or I am too late. The path does not open only for the perfect, it opens for the sincere. It opens for those who are willing to look honestly at suffering and not turn away. It opens for those who still stumble, but wish to walk more carefully. It opens for those whose hearts, even after many distractions, still remember the direction of light. The first sign of a soul ripening toward the Buddha path is this quiet, persistent turning. It is the feeling that the Dharma is not foreign to you. It is the sense that compassion is more natural than cruelty, that truth is more nourishing than illusion, that peace is more valuable than victory. It is the invisible bow before the visible bow, the inner refuge before the spoken refuge. The small flame before the lamp is fully lit. And sometimes, that silent calling becomes clearest, not through words, but through a sound that reaches deeper than thought, the sound of a temple bell. There are sounds in this world that pass through the ear and disappear. A door closing, a motorbike passing, a voice calling from far away. They come, they go, and the mind barely follows them. But there are also sounds that do not merely enter the ear. They enter the chest. They touch a place where words have never reached. They make a person pause without knowing why. For some people, the sound of a temple bell is like that. It may happen early in the morning, when the sky is still pale and the streets have not yet fully awakened. The air is cool. Mist hangs lightly over the rooftops. Somewhere beyond the trees, from the quiet ground of a temple, the bell is struck. One deep sound opens into the silence. It does not hurry. It spreads slowly, like a circle widening on still water. It touches the leaves, the stone steps, the old wooden doors, the small birds shaking sleep from their wings. It travels across the courtyard where incense has not yet burned, across the sleeping houses, across the heart of someone who perhaps never expected to be moved. And suddenly, inside that person, something becomes quiet. Not because anyone has explained a doctrine, not because someone has commanded them to believe, not because they are trying to be religious or appear devout, but simply because the bell has awakened a depth in them that daily life often covers. The mind that was restless a moment ago becomes still. The worry that had been circling since yesterday loosens for a breath. The anger that felt so justified begins to soften at the edges. The sadness that had no name rises gently, almost like tears, but not only tears of pain. Sometimes they are tears of recognition. This is one of the signs of a heart with wholesome roots in the Buddha's path. Each time there is a chance to hear the temple bell, the soul feels shaken, touched, called back. The temple bell is more than a sound. In the Buddhist spirit, it is a reminder. It reminds us that all things are passing. The sound is born, expands, fades, and disappears. In that single moment, the bell teaches impermanence without giving a lecture. It shows us that everything we cling to is also like this. Rising, staying for a while, then dissolving. Our joys, our sorrows, our pride, our complaints, our victories, our losses, even the body we cherish so strongly. They are not fixed. They are not ours in the way we imagine. They are sounds moving through the vastness of life. And yet, the bell does not make impermanence feel cold. It makes it feel tender. It tells us gently, since all things pass, do not waste your life in hatred. Since all things change, do not hold your pain as if it must be your permanent home. Since this bren in the same way again, come back, be awake. Be kind now. When the bell echoes through a temple courtyard in the evening, it carries another kind of beauty. The light is fading. The last gold of the day lies on the roof tiles. Incense smoke rises in thin blue lines before the altar. Somewhere, an old monk walks slowly across the yard. A novice sweeps fallen leaves, not in a hurry, not as a burden, but as if each movement belongs to the path. The bell sounds, and the whole space seems to breathe. Even the birds become part of the prayer. Even the trees seem to listen. Even someone standing outside the gate, unsure whether to step in, may feel the heart tremble. Why does this happen? Why does one person hear the bell and continue walking, while another hears it and feels as if an unseen hand has touched their shoulder? Why does one person think it is only a bell, while another becomes silent, humbled, almost homesick for a place they cannot name? Perhaps the bell awakens memories older than this present lifetime. Perhaps it touches seeds of virtue planted long ago, in ways the conscious mind cannot remember. In Buddhism, the mind is not seen as empty of history. It carries tendencies, affinities, fears, longings, and seeds. Some seeds are unwholesome, greed, confusion, and harm. Some seeds are wholesome, pulling us toward compassion, reverence, truth, and liberation. When the bell sounds, it may water those wholesome seeds. It may call forth something that has been waiting quietly beneath the noise of ordinary life. Or perhaps the bell moves us because we are tired. Tired in a way that entertainment cannot heal. Tired of pretending to be strong all the time. Tired of competing, defending, explaining, comparing, tired of chasing one desire only to be caught by another. The bell comes like a compassionate interruption. It does not ask, "How successful are you?" It does not ask, "How much have you achieved?" It does not ask, "Who was right? Who was wrong?" It simply vibrates through the air and says, without words, "Stop for a moment. Return to yourself." There is great mercy in such a sound. The temple bell does not judge the person who hears it. It does not say, "You are impure, so stay away." It does not say, "You have made mistakes, so you are unworthy." It does not say, "Only those who have already understood the Dharma may listen." The bell is generous. It rings for monks, for lay people, for children, for travelers, for the broken-hearted, for the doubtful, for those who stand outside the temple unsure of what they believe. It rings for the one who has kept precepts carefully, and for the one who has failed many times but still carries a wish to begin again. In that way, the bell is like the Dharma itself. It does not flatter us, but it does not abandon us. It wakes us without violence. It corrects us without humiliation. It points toward freedom without forcing our feet to move. The sound arises, and if we are ready, even for one breath, we receive it. Some people may feel goosebumps when the bell is struck. Some may feel the throat tighten. Some may suddenly remember their parents, their childhood, a deceased loved one, a promise they once made to be good, a moment when they hurt someone and never apologized. Some may feel a wave of regret, not the kind that crushes the spirit, but the kind that cleanses it. The bell has a way of opening rooms inside the heart that have been locked for years. Maybe there was anger there. The bell enters, and the anger loses its sharpness. Maybe there was grief there. The bell enters, and the grief is no longer alone. Maybe there was confusion there. The bell enters, and the mind remembers that silence is also a teacher. This is why we should not dismiss such moments as mere sentimentality. In modern life, people often feel embarrassed by tenderness. If the eyes fill with tears, they quickly wipe them away. If the heart is touched, they laugh and say, "I don't know why I'm like this." If a sacred sound makes them quiet, they may tell themselves it's nothing. "I'm just emotional today." But not every softness is weakness. Not every tear is confusion. Sometimes a tear is the soul recognizing a path before the intellect can explain it. A sincere moment of stillness can become a doorway, one bell, one breath, one pause before speaking harshly, one moment of remembering that life is fragile, one moment of seeing that the person we hate is also suffering, one moment of feeling ashamed of cruelty and wishing to become more gentle. These moments may seem small, but in the life of the spirit, they are not small. A whole direction can change because the heart was quiet, long enough to hear what it truly needed. The bell invites us to breathe. Not the shallow breath of anxiety, but a full, honest breath. Breathing in, we know we are alive. Breathing out, we release a little of what we have been carrying. The bell invites us to return to the present moment, because the present moment is the only place where transformation can begin. We cannot practice compassion yesterday. We cannot forgive tomorrow. We can only begin now in this breath, in this step, in this softening of the heart. And when a person naturally responds to that invitation, it reveals something beautiful. It reveals a sensitivity to awakening. It shows that the heart has not become completely hardened by the dust of the world. Even if that person has not yet taken refuge, even if they do not know the chants, even if they cannot explain the Four Noble Truths or the meaning of karma in perfect words, the response is already meaningful. The bell speaks the language of awakening, and something within them understands. Not all understanding begins in the mind. Some understanding begins as reverence. Some begins as a tremble in the chest. Some begins as silence. Some begins when we are walking past a temple gate and, for reasons unknown, we slow down, we look toward the courtyard, we smell incense in the air, we hear the bell fading into space, and for one brief moment, the world feels less like a place to conquer and more like a place to care for. That moment matters, because the restless mind is always being pulled outward. It runs toward plans, fears, possessions, praise, resentment, memories, and imagined futures. It is like a traveler who has forgotten the way home. The bell does not build a prison around the mind. It simply points homeward. It reminds the wandering heart that peace is possible, that awareness is available, that the door of practice has not closed. When we hear the temple bell and become still, we are not escaping life. We are returning to life more deeply. We are remembering the preciousness of this human birth. We are remembering that every being we meet wishes to avoid suffering. We are remembering that anger burns the one who carries it. We are remembering that words can wound, but words can also heal. We are remembering that the time to live wisely is not later, when everything is convenient. It is now. If the bell touches you, let it touch you. Do not be ashamed of that tenderness. Do not rush to cover the silence with noise. Do not explain it away too quickly. Stand there for a moment, breathe. Let the sound fade naturally. Feel how it leaves behind a spaciousness in the heart. In that spaciousness, you may see something clearly. Perhaps you will see that a grudge is too heavy to keep carrying. Perhaps you will remember someone who needs your forgiveness. Perhaps you will feel the wish to stop harming yourself with old habits. Perhaps you will simply feel grateful to be alive. This is how the Dharma sometimes enters. Not through argument, not through pressure, not through fear, but through beauty, stillness, and recognition. A bell sounds, and the heart bows before the body knows how to bow. And if, again and again, the sound of the temple bell brings you back to humility, compassion, and awareness, then cherish that sign. It may be a mark of deep, wholesome roots. It may be the echo of goodness cultivated over many conditions. It may be a reminder that although you have wandered through many distractions, the path has not lost you. Somewhere within, there is still a listener. Somewhere within, there is still a place that knows how to respond to the sacred. Life in this world is noisy. The noise outside is loud, but the noise inside is often louder. Desires call, fears call, old wounds call. The world tells us to hurry, to prove, to possess, to win. But the temple bell calls differently. It calls us not to become greater than others, but to become more awake. It calls us not to gather more burdens, but to release what poisons the heart. It calls us not to escape humanity, but to love it with clearer eyes. So the next time you hear a bell from a temple, whether near or far, whether at dawn or dusk, whether you are inside the gate or only passing by, listen with your whole being. Let the sound remind you that everything is changing. Let it remind you that this life is precious and uncertain. Let it remind you that kindness should not be postponed. Let it remind you that the Buddha's path is not somewhere distant from your ordinary steps. It may begin right there, in the simple act of stopping, breathing, and remembering. From that trembling before the temple bell, another sign often appears naturally in the heart. A deep respect for those who live with virtue, restraint, and kindness. From that quiet trembling before the temple bell, the heart begins to recognize another kind of beauty. Not the beauty that dazzles the eyes for a moment, not the beauty that comes from fine clothing, high position, or the loud praise of the crowd, but the beauty of a person who lives gently, honestly, and with restraint. There are people who may not speak much about religion, who may not display any grand appearance, yet when we are near them, something in us becomes calmer. Their presence does not pressure us, does not compete with us, does not make us feel small. Instead, it reminds us that a human life can be lived with dignity, with kindness, and with a quiet strength that harms no one. A person with wholesome roots in the Dharma often feels a natural respect for such people. This respect may arise long before one understands Buddhist teachings clearly. It may arise before one knows the meaning of refuge, precepts, meditation, karma, or liberation. Yet the heart already knows how to bow inwardly before goodness. It sees someone who speaks truthfully, who keeps promises, who remains humble when praised, who does not retaliate when insulted, who helps others without asking for recognition. And suddenly the heart feels moved. There is a trust that appears, a reverence that is difficult to explain. It is as though the soul recognizes a familiar fragrance, something pure and ancient, something it has been searching for without knowing its name. This is one of the signs of a person whose roots of goodness are ripening. They have faith in virtue. They may not be impressed by people merely because they are rich. They may not be easily dazzled by fame, cleverness, power, or a commanding voice. The world often teaches us to admire those who win, those who dominate, those who know how to speak beautifully even when their hearts are not clean. The world may praise those who rise quickly, accumulate much, defeat others in argument, or stand above the crowd with confidence. But the heart that carries a seed of the Buddha's path is moved by something different. It is moved by sincerity. It is touched by patience. It feels deep respect for those who live simply and do not injure others. It feels a quiet joy when it meets someone whose conduct is clean, whose words bring peace, whose eyes hold compassion rather than judgment. Such people may be monks or nuns living a life of discipline and prayer. They may be elders whose backs are bent with age, but whose minds have become gentle through years of endurance. They may be teachers who guide without humiliating, parents who sacrifice without complaining, neighbors who quietly help the sick, the poor, or the lonely. Sometimes they are not people with titles at all. They are ordinary men and women whom the world may overlook. They do not stand on a stage. They do not speak of themselves as holy, yet their lives carry a kind of moral fragrance. You can feel it in the way they treat the weak. You can hear it in the way they refuse to gossip. You can see it in the way they choose peace when anger would be easier. When we meet such a person, something happens inside us. We may not immediately become like them. We may still have anger, jealousy, pride, and many habits that pull us back. But the meeting leaves a mark. It plants a question in the heart. If this person can live with such calmness, why must I always be driven by resentment? If this person can forgive, why must I keep carrying old wounds? If this person can speak gently even when hurt, why do I believe harshness is strength in this way? Respect for virtue becomes more than admiration. It becomes a mirror. It shows us what is possible. It awakens a longing to become better, not for the sake of being praised, but because goodness itself begins to feel beautiful. Imagine seeing someone find a wallet on the street. No one is watching closely. There is money inside, perhaps more than that person has held in a long time. The temptation is there, quiet but real. Yet, they do not take what is not theirs. They search for the owner. They return it fully, without bargaining, without expecting reward, without making a performance of their honesty. For many people, this may seem like a small act, but for a sensitive heart, such a moment is powerful. It reveals that integrity still exists in the world. It shows that not every person is ruled by greed. And if you have wholesome roots, witnessing this may touch you deeply. You may walk away feeling that the world is not as dark as it sometimes appears. You may feel that somewhere beneath all confusion, the human heart still has the capacity to be noble. Or imagine an elder being insulted unfairly. The words spoken against them are sharp, perhaps even cruel. Everyone nearby expects a reaction. They expect anger, defense, perhaps a return of harsh speech. But the elder remains still, not because they are weak, not because they do not understand, but because they have seen enough of life to know that anger answered with anger only spreads fire. Their face may be quiet, their voice may be soft, they may simply say, "May you be well," or they may say nothing at all. Watching this, the heart is shaken in a different way. It realizes that true strength does not always roar. Sometimes true strength is the ability to remain unburned while standing in the middle of flames. Sometimes true victory is not defeating another person, but refusing to let hatred enter one's own mind. A person with roots in the Dharma notices these things. They may not always say it aloud, but inwardly they bow. They bow not necessarily with the body, but with feeling. They recognize that moral beauty is rare and precious. They understand, even if only vaguely, that such patience did not appear by accident. It was cultivated. It came from many choices, many moments of restraint, many times when that person could have chosen selfishness, but chose compassion instead. And when the heart respects this, it is already moving toward the Dharma, because the Dharma is not only found in scriptures, ceremonies, or temples. The Dharma also appears in conduct. It appears in the person who refuses to lie, though lying would bring advantage. It appears in the one who protects life. It appears in the one who shares food. It appears in the one who listens deeply to another's suffering. Consider the experience of hearing a monk speak gently. His words may be very simple. He may not offer grand philosophy or complicated explanations. Yet the tone of his speech carries care. He does not speak to show superiority. He does not use the teachings as a weapon to shame anyone. He speaks as one who understands that people suffer, that people make mistakes, that everyone is carrying unseen burdens. As you listen, your breathing slows. Some hardness in you softens. You may not remember every sentence later, but you remember the feeling. You remember that his voice did not push you away from yourself. It invited you to return. It made you believe that spiritual life is not cold or distant, but warm, patient, and deeply human. Or perhaps you meet a person who helps others quietly. They are the one who brings food to a struggling family and leaves before being thanked. They are the one who visits someone in the hospital when everyone else has forgotten. They are the one who gives time, attention, and care, without taking pictures, without making announcements, without turning compassion into a display. There is a special purity in hidden goodness. It asks for nothing. It does not decorate itself. It is like a flower blooming in a secluded place, giving fragrance whether anyone praises it or not. When a heart with wholesome roots encounters this, it feels reverence. It understands that this is a kind of wealth greater than gold. It senses that a life lived for others has a beauty that cannot be bought. This reverence, for virtuous people, is not blind worship. It is not about putting human beings on pedestals and imagining they are perfect. The Buddhist path teaches us to see clearly, not to become naive. Even good people have limitations. Even teachers, elders, and spiritual practitioners are still human unless they have fully awakened. But there is a wise kind of respect that recognizes wholesome qualities wherever they appear. It does not demand perfection before it honors goodness. It does not become cynical just because the world contains hypocrisy. It knows that if we only look for faults, we will train the mind in contempt. But if we learn to recognize virtue, we train the mind in aspiration. This is important because what we admire shapes what we become. If we admire only wealth, our choices slowly bend toward acquisition. If we admire only fame, our hearts become restless for attention. If we admire power, we may begin to justify cruelty. If we admire clever speech, we may forget the value of truth. But if we admire kindness, patience, humility, and moral courage, those qualities begin to take root in us. The mind naturally turns toward what it honors. The heart slowly imitates what it deeply respects. A child who respects a compassionate elder learns compassion without being lectured. A young person who respects a peaceful monk begins to believe that calmness is possible. An adult who respects someone who forgives may one day find the strength to put down an old resentment. In this way, respect for virtue is itself a seed of virtue. When the heart bows before goodness, arrogance begins to loosen. When we admire humility, we become less proud of our own opinions. When we admire honesty, our lies begin to taste bitter. When we admire generosity, our selfishness becomes more visible. This is not always comfortable. True goodness can be gentle, but it can also expose us. Not by condemning us, but by showing us the distance between how we are living and how we could live. Yet this exposure is a blessing. It is like morning light entering a room that has been closed for too long. At first, the dust becomes visible, but because it is visible, it can finally be cleaned. Many people with wholesome roots feel this deeply. They may look at a person who lives ethically and feel both admiration and shame, but not the shame that destroys, rather, it is the tender shame that awakens conscience. It says, I too want to live more carefully. I too want my presence to bring less harm. I too want my words to heal instead of wound. This kind of shame is not self-hatred. It is moral sensitivity. It is the beginning of refinement. It is the heart remembering its own higher possibility. And sometimes, respect for the virtuous becomes a refuge during confusing times. When society becomes noisy, when people compete in cruelty, when truth is twisted, when success seems to belong to those without conscience, the sight of one ethical person can restore faith. One honest person can keep us from despair. One gentle teacher can remind us that wisdom still walks in the world. One compassionate neighbor can prove that goodness does not need to be famous to be real. Their existence becomes like a small lamp in the night. It may not light the whole earth, but it is enough to show the next step. The Buddha's path is sustained not only by teachings written in books, but also by living examples. A person who embodies virtue makes the Dharma visible. Their life says, anger can be softened, greed can be restrained, pride can be humbled, compassion can be practiced, and peace can be cultivated. For someone whose wholesome roots are ripening, this living proof is precious. It gives confidence that the path is not merely an idea. It can be walked, it can be breathed, it can be carried in the hands, in the eyes, in the way one earns a living, speaks to a child, cares for an animal, or responds to an enemy. So if you find yourself deeply respecting people of integrity, do not dismiss it as a small feeling. If your heart becomes quiet before the humble, if you feel moved by those who forgive, if you trust those whose lives are clean and whose kindness asks for nothing, recognize this as a meaningful sign. It shows that your heart still knows how to honor what is wholesome. It shows that beneath the dust of ordinary life, there is a seed already leaning toward the light. Protect that respect, feed it wisely. Spend time near people who make you want to become more honest, more patient, more compassionate. Listen to those whose words are supported by their conduct. Learn from the humble, not only from the impressive. Let the goodness of others encourage the goodness within you. And when you meet a person whose virtue touches your heart, offer gratitude silently, because such meetings are not ordinary. They are reminders sent along the road, telling us that a nobler life is possible. And sometimes this respect for virtue appears very early, even in a young person whose age is small, but whose heart already leans toward the sacred. There are people who are still young in years, yet when they hear a teaching about impermanence, their eyes become quiet, while others are rushing toward noise, applause, appearance, and comparison. Something inside them pauses and asks, is this all there is? They may still smile, still enjoy friendship, still carry dreams for study, work, love, and the future. But beneath all of that, there is a deeper current, a tender attraction toward the path of wisdom, compassion, and awakening. This is not always easy for a young heart to understand. In youth, the world often speaks loudly. It says, be successful, be admired, be beautiful, be better than others, don't fall behind, don't be too soft, don't think too much. The young person is surrounded by endless images, endless opinions, endless invitations to compare one life with another. Everyone seems to be performing happiness, while secretly carrying their own loneliness, fear, and confusion. And in the middle of such a world, If a young person begins to love the Dharma, begins to feel comfort in meditation, begins to be moved by the life of the Buddha, that is not a small thing. Perhaps they first heard a Buddhist story when they were a child. Perhaps they saw their grandmother light incense in the morning, bowing with a sincerity that no one needed to praise. Perhaps they once followed their parents to a temple, not understanding the meaning of the chanting, but feeling peace in the sound. Or perhaps no one taught them at all. Perhaps one day, after losing someone, after being betrayed, after watching suffering appear in life for the first time, they suddenly began to ask questions that their friends did not ask. Why do people suffer? Why do we hurt one another? What happens after death? How can I live so that I do not bring pain to others? When such questions arise early, they can feel heavy. A young person may wonder, why am I thinking about these things? Why can't I just live lightly like everyone else? But to think deeply is not a weakness. To be touched by the suffering of life is not a mistake. Sometimes it is a sign that the heart is already ripening. It may be young, but it carries a sensitivity that does not allow it to sleep completely. It sees that laughter is beautiful, but also fragile. It sees that success is useful, but not enough. It sees that love is precious, but it changes. It sees that the body is full of energy today, yet one day it too must grow old, become sick, and pass away. This awareness does not make youth dark. If understood wisely, it makes youth more meaningful. The Dharma does not come to take away the freshness of young life. It does not say, stop laughing, stop learning, stop dreaming, stop loving your friends, stop building your future. The Dharma simply whispers, do all of this with awareness. Do not lose yourself. Do not harm others for the sake of winning. Do not trade your conscience for temporary praise. Remember that what you cultivate in your heart will follow you further than any achievement. A young person who is drawn to the path may still enjoy ordinary things. They may study hard, build a career, take care of their appearance, travel, listen to music, and share jokes with friends. Spiritual maturity is not measured by how distant someone appears from daily life. It is measured by the quality of their intention. Do they remember kindness when they are angry? Do they feel remorse when they speak harshly? Do they care whether their choices create suffering? Do they wonder how to become more honest, more patient, more grateful? These are the quiet signs of a heart that has begun to turn toward the sacred. Sometimes their peers may not understand. A friend might say, "Why do you like going to the temple? That is for old people." Someone else may laugh and say, "Why are you so serious? Why talk about karma, compassion, or meditation?" And because of this, the young person may feel embarrassed. They may hide their interest. They may read Dharma teachings quietly at night, listen to chanting when no one knows, or keep a small image of the Buddha in their room as a private source of peace. Their heart is being fed by something deeper than entertainment, but they do not always have the language to explain it. Yet the heart knows what nourishes it. After many hours of scrolling through other people's lives, the mind may become restless and empty. But after hearing one sentence of true teaching, something becomes clear. After sitting quietly for only a few minutes, the breath becomes gentle. After offering help to someone, the heart feels clean. After forgiving a person, even a little, there is a release that no entertainment can replace. These experiences teach the young person silently. There is a happiness that does not depend only on getting what I want. There is a joy that comes from becoming less selfish, less cruel, less lost. To be young and already drawn to moral reflection is a beautiful condition, but it must be protected with wisdom, because even spiritual interest can become another form of identity. A young person may begin to think, "I am different. I am more awakened. Others are shallow. This is a danger." The moment the Dharma becomes a reason to look down on others, it is no longer being understood correctly. The Buddha's path does not make the heart arrogant. It softens the heart. It does not teach us to condemn those who are still wandering. It teaches us to remember that we too have wandered for a long time. So if you are young and you love the path, do not use that love to separate yourself from others. Let it make you more patient with them. Your friends may be interested in different things. They may care more about popularity, romance, money, or pleasure. Do not rush to judge them. Everyone wakes at a different hour. Some seeds need more rain, more time, more seasons of experience. If you truly believe in compassion, then you must allow others to grow at their own pace. Your task is not to prove that you are spiritual. Your task is to live in such a way that peace can be felt near you. And if you are a parent, teacher, or elder listening to this, do not dismiss the spiritual questions of the young. Sometimes a child's question is deeper than an adult's answer. Sometimes a teenager sitting quietly in the back of a temple is not being strange. They are trying to understand the ache of existence. Sometimes a young person who asks about death, karma, or suffering is not being negative. They are searching for truth. Be gentle with them. Do not mock their sincerity. Do not force them into rigid forms before their heart is ready. Give them good examples. Give them warmth. Give them a path that feels alive, not only a set of rules. The attraction to the Dharma in youth may come from many causes. It may come from upbringing, from seeing parents or grandparents practice with devotion. It may come from past impressions, from having met noble teachings before, even if we cannot remember when or where. It may come from suffering, because pain often opens questions that comfort keeps hidden. It may come from a naturally tender heart, one that cannot bear cruelty, one that feels the sorrow of animals, the loneliness of the elderly, the quiet grief behind another person's smile. Wherever it comes from, such attraction should be honored, but honoring it does not mean rushing. Young people, after discovering the Dharma, may want to change everything at once. They may want to renounce all pleasure, correct everyone around them, practice intensely, or demand perfection from themselves. This too can bring imbalance. The path is not a fire that burns the whole house down in one night. It is a lamp that is tended carefully. Begin with small goodness. Speak more gently. Respect your parents, even when you do not agree with everything they say. Be honest in your studies or work. Do not betray friends. Do not laugh at another person's pain. Reduce harm in the ways you can. Keep your promises. Apologize when you are wrong. These simple things are not separate from the Dharma. They are the Dharma entering daily life. A young person who can bow before the Buddha but cannot speak kindly to their family has not yet understood deeply. A young person who reads many teachings but refuses to listen to others still needs to practice. A young person who meditates but uses harsh words online is still learning. This is not something to be ashamed of. We are all still learning. But it is important to remember that the path is proven not by what we admire, but by what we become. There is a special beauty in a young heart that still has dreams, yet does not forget impermanence. Such a person may work hard, but they know success is not the final refuge. They may love someone, but they know love must be guided by responsibility and kindness. They may enjoy beauty, but they know the body changes. They may plan for the future, but they know life is uncertain. Because of this, they learn to be grateful. They do not postpone goodness too long. They understand that the words, "I'm sorry, thank you, I forgive you, and may you be well," should not always wait until tomorrow. And perhaps that is why the Dharma calls to them, not because they are tired of life, but because they want to live more truthfully. They want their laughter to be clean, not built on mocking others. They want their ambition to be honest, not fed by envy. They want their relationships to be sincere, not based only on need or possession. They want their youth to become a field where wholesome seeds are planted early, so that when storms come later, the roots will be strong. If you recognize yourself in this, do not be afraid. You are not old before your time. You are not strange for loving silence. You are not weak for caring about karma. You are not foolish for feeling moved by compassion. Your heart is simply hearing a call that may have been echoing for a very long time. Walk gently, learn steadily. Stay humble. Let the Dharma brighten your youth, not burden it. Let it guide your choices without making you cold toward the world. For a young person who loves the path is like a tender tree growing toward morning light. It still needs rain, protection, patience, and time. It may bend in the wind. It may make mistakes. It may not yet bear fruit. But the direction is already meaningful. The roots are already searching downward. The leaves are already opening upward. And when the heart truly loves the path, it rarely becomes loud or boastful. More often, it becomes humble, attentive, and eager to learn. And from that quiet love for the path, another sign begins to reveal itself. Not with noise, not with display, but with a very gentle fragrance. Humility. It is the fragrance of a heart that does not need to stand above anyone in order to feel valuable. It is the softness of someone who can sit in a room, listen to another person speak, and not rush to prove that they already know. It is the grace of a person who understands that wisdom does not always arrive wearing the robes of a teacher. Sometimes it comes from an elder's trembling voice. Sometimes it comes from a child's innocent question. Sometimes it comes from a mistake that burns the heart for many years. Sometimes it comes quietly, through suffering, when life has stripped away our pride and left us with nothing but honesty. A person with wholesome roots in the Dharma often carries this kind of humility naturally. They may not even think of themselves as humble. They simply feel that there is always more to learn, always more to understand, always more within themselves that needs to be purified. When they hear a teaching, they do not immediately ask, "Who else needs to hear this?" They first ask, "Where does this touch my own life? What in me still needs to change?" That is a very precious attitude, because many people enjoy teachings as ideas, as beautiful words, as something to admire from a distance. But a humble heart allows the teaching to come near. It allows the teaching to enter the private places, the proud places, the wounded places, the places where the ego is still hiding. Humility does not mean thinking badly of oneself. It does not mean walking through life with shame, feeling small or denying one's own goodness. True humility is much clearer than that. It is the understanding that whatever goodness we have is something to be protected, cultivated, and offered, not something to be used as a weapon of superiority. A humble person can have talent, intelligence, knowledge, and experience, but they do not turn these things into a throne. They know that everything can be lost, everything can change, and everything is supported by countless causes and conditions. Even the ability to understand the Dharma is not merely mine. It depends on parents, teachers, past efforts, suffering, blessings, and moments of awakening that cannot be fully explained. This is why humility is one of the clearest signs of a soul ripening toward the Buddha's path. The more a person truly understands life, the less they feel the need to boast. The more they see impermanence, the less they cling to being praised. The more they see karma, the more careful they become with their own mind. And the more they glimpse the depth of the Dharma, the more they realize how much they still do not know. A cup that is already full cannot receive fresh water. A heart that is full of itself cannot receive the Dharma. But a humble heart, even if it knows very little, is open. And because it is open, it can be filled. In Buddhism, listening is not a small thing. Listening is one of the first gates through which wisdom enters. Before we can contemplate deeply, before we can practice steadily, before we can transform our habits, we must first be willing to hear. The ancient path often begins with hearing the Dharma, then reflecting upon it, and then applying it in daily life. To listen is to bow the mind down, even for a moment, and say, "Perhaps there is something here that can help me awaken." That simple willingness is already a blessing. Some people listen only to answer. Some listen only to compare. Some listen only to find a weakness in what is being said. But a person with wholesome roots listens differently. They listen with the whole heart. When they hear a Dharma talk, they may not remember every word, but one sentence may stay with them for years. It may return on a difficult night when anger is rising. It may return at the moment they are about to speak harshly. It may return when grief makes the world feel empty. A single teaching, received deeply, can become a lamp for dark days. It can become a hand placed gently on the shoulder of the mind. There are people who have heard thousands of teachings yet remain unchanged. And there are people who hear one sentence and begin to live differently. The difference is not only in the teaching, it is in the soil of the heart. When the soil is dry and hard, even good rain runs away. But when the soil has been softened by sincerity, even a small drop can sink in. This is why humility matters. It softens the ground. It allows wisdom to take root. A humble person listens not only to monks, nuns, scriptures, or formal Dharma talks. They also listen to elders, to those who have walked through storms before them. They listen to the tired voice of a parent and understand there is love hidden beneath worry. They listen to the silence after an argument and learn the cost of careless speech. They listen to the life of someone who has suffered from greed, hatred, or addiction, and they see the truth of cause and effect. They listen to the face of a dying person and remember impermanence. They listen to their own body when it is exhausted. They listen to their own mind when it is restless. They listen to suffering, not as an enemy, but as a messenger. Even criticism can become a teacher to such a person. This does not mean they accept every harsh word as truth. It does not mean they allow others to abuse them. But they are not so proud that they reject everything immediately. If someone points out a fault, they pause. They may feel hurt at first, because they are human. Their chest may tighten, their face may grow warm. But beneath that first reaction, something wiser asks, "Is there something here I should examine?" That question is a doorway. Many people close that door quickly because it is uncomfortable. But a person with wholesome roots dares to open it, even a little. And sometimes, behind criticism, they find a jewel, an opportunity to correct themselves before karma becomes heavier. This willingness to listen is closely connected to a love for collecting moral teachings. Such a person may quietly save a line from a sutra, a verse from a master, a sentence heard in a Dharma talk, or a simple saying from an elder. They may write it in a notebook, keep it on their phone, place it near their desk, or carry it silently in memory. To others, it may look like a small habit, but within the heart, something sacred is happening. They are gathering medicine for them. Teachings are not decoration. They are not collected to make the mind look rich. They are medicine for anger, medicine for fear, medicine for jealousy, medicine for despair. When resentment rises, they remember a teaching on forgiveness. When pride swells, they remember impermanence. When desire becomes overwhelming, they remember the nature of craving. When they are tempted to harm another being, they remember compassion. In this way, a short sentence can become a medicine bottle opened at the right time. A verse can become a cool cloth on a fevered mind. A Dharma talk listened to while working, cooking, driving, or cleaning can slowly reshape the inner world. There are people who love to collect many things: clothing, jewelry, images, achievements, opinions. But the one who has wholesome roots often finds a quiet joy in collecting wisdom. They may not talk much about it. They may simply feel comforted when they come across words that point toward goodness. They may read a passage again and again, not because they do not understand it, but because it nourishes them. Just as the body needs food each day, the heart also needs reminders. Without reminders, the world quickly pulls the mind into forgetfulness. One day of carelessness becomes many days. One harsh word becomes a habit. one selfish act becomes a pattern. So the humble practitioner gathers teachings like a traveler, gathering clean water before crossing a dry land. Sometimes the teaching they collect is not written in any book. It may be the memory of seeing someone give quietly, without expecting praise. It may be the patience of a grandmother who endured hardship without bitterness. It may be the kindness of a stranger who helped and then disappeared. It may be the sight of an animal protecting its young, reminding them that love is not only human. It may be the way trees continue to offer shade, even to those who cut their branches. For a heart that knows how to listen, the whole world becomes a scripture. Life itself opens page after page. But here, we must be gentle and honest. There is a danger on the spiritual path, and it can appear even in people who love the Dharma. It is the habit of collecting teachings without practicing them. We may gather beautiful words, share them, repeat them, admire them, and still not allow them to change the way we speak to our family, the way we treat those beneath us, the way we handle anger, money, desire, or pride. We may know many teachings about compassion and still be cruel in small ways. We may speak of non-attachment, but cling tightly to our opinions. We may quote the Dharma yet refuse to apologize. This is a subtle danger, because it can make a person feel spiritual without becoming transformed. The purpose of gathering teachings is not to appear wise. It is not to decorate the ego with sacred language. It is not to win arguments, correct everyone else, or prove that we understand more than others. If the Dharma becomes only a tool to point outward, then we have missed its deepest mercy. The teaching is first a mirror. It shows us our own face. It shows where greed still hides, where anger still burns, where delusion still clouds the heart. A humble person allows the teaching to correct the self before using it to instruct the world. This is not easy. No one enjoys seeing their own faults clearly. The ego prefers to study the faults of others. It says, this teaching is perfect for that person. This lesson should be heard by my friend, my partner, my child, my enemy. But humility turns the light inward and says, let me practice first. Let me become softer first. Let me reduce my own harshness first. Let me make my own heart more honest, more patient, more compassionate. That is when the Dharma becomes alive. Not when it stays on the tongue, but when it enters the hands, the eyes, the tone of voice. The choice is made when no one is watching. A humble heart does not become passive. It does not lose discernment. It does not believe everything blindly. Rather, it listens deeply, reflects carefully, and practices sincerely. It knows that wisdom must be tested in life. If a teaching makes the heart kinder, clearer, less greedy, less hateful, less confused, then it is medicine. If a belief makes the heart proud, rigid, cold, and judgmental, then even if the words sound holy, something has gone wrong in the way they are being held. This is why humility and listening belong together. Without humility, listening becomes shallow. Without listening, humility has no nourishment. Together, they create a mind that can learn from every moment. Such a person may be young or old, educated or uneducated, ordained or lay, newly interested in Buddhism, or long familiar with the path. What matters is the quality of the heart. Do they still know how to bow inwardly? Do they still feel grateful when truth appears? Do they still pause before speaking? Do they still allow life to teach them? If you recognize this in yourself, cherish it. If you are someone who loves meaningful words, who keeps teachings close, who feels moved by simple moral truths, who can sit quietly and listen when others speak of goodness, do not dismiss that as ordinary. It may be one of the signs that your wholesome roots are already alive, perhaps in past conditions. Your heart has known the taste of Dharma. Perhaps in this life, even before formal vows or deep study, something within you already leans toward wisdom. Protect that leaning. Protect that softness. The world can be loud, proud, impatient, and quick to argue. A humble heart is rare, and if you find that you are not yet humble, do not despair. Humility can be cultivated. Begin by listening more than you speak. Begin by admitting, at least to yourself, that you do not know everything. Begin by thanking those who teach you, even when the lesson is uncomfortable. Begin by reading one good teaching and practicing it for a day, instead of collecting 100 and practicing none. Begin by apologizing when you are wrong. Begin by asking, what can this situation teach me? Slowly, pride loosens. Slowly, the mind becomes workable. Slowly, wisdom finds a place to sit. A person who truly loves to listen becomes peaceful in a way that others can feel. They are not always trying to dominate the room. They do not need every conversation to end with their victory. They do not treat disagreement as a battlefield. Because they have tasted the value of inner learning, they are less intoxicated by outer winning. Their strength becomes quiet. Their understanding becomes gentle. Their presence becomes easy to be near. And from such humility, another beautiful quality naturally begins to grow. A peaceful nature that does not delight in conflict, does not hunger for endless argument, and does not seek to wound others just to prove a point. There is a kind of person who does not feel alive when there is conflict in the room, while others may become heated, eager to prove, eager to strike with clever words. This person feels something contract inside, not because they have no thoughts, not because they are afraid of truth, but because deep down they can sense the suffering that hides beneath quarrels. They may not always know how to explain it, but they feel it clearly. When anger rises, something precious is easily lost. A family meal can become a battlefield. A friendship can turn cold. A few careless sentences can remain in someone's heart for years. And so, even when they are provoked, even when they have reasons to answer sharply, they often pause. They choose a softer word. They step away. They let silence protect what anger would destroy. This gentle nature is one of the signs of wholesome roots in the Dharma, but we must understand it correctly. Gentleness is not weakness. A gentle person is not an empty person, not a person without views, not someone who allows the world to trample over them. True gentleness is a strength that has been touched by compassion. It is the strength to hold fire without throwing it. It is the strength to know, I could hurt this person with my words, but I do not wish to create that wound. It is the strength to remain human when the atmosphere invites cruelty. There are people who mistake harshness for honesty. They say, I only speak the truth. But the truth they speak is wrapped in pride, sharpened by resentment, thrown like a stone. In the teaching of the Buddha, truth is not only about accuracy. Truth is also about timing, intention, and the condition of the heart from which it comes. A sentence may be factually correct, yet spiritually unskillful if it is spoken only to humiliate, to defeat, to make another person feel small. Someone with roots in the Dharma begins to sense this. They may not have memorized scriptures. They may not know the formal language of right speech, yet in their own conscience, they understand. Speech can heal, and speech can harm. A word can open a door, and a word can close a heart. A conversation can plant peace, or it can plant bitterness that continues to grow long after both people have walked away. That is why they do not enjoy unnecessary arguments. They do not feel proud simply because they have won a debate. They know that winning an argument can still leave wounds. The other person may become silent, but not convinced. They may stop responding, but their heart may be bleeding. In the outer world, one person may appear victorious, but in the inner world, both may have lost something. This is especially visible in family life. Within a family, people know exactly where to touch one another's pain. A son knows what sentence will hurt his father. A wife knows what memory will silence her husband. Siblings know old weaknesses, old mistakes, old wounds. When irritation rises, it is easy to use that knowledge as a weapon. It is easy to say, you have always been like this, or that is why no one can trust you, or you never change. Such words may come out in one moment, but they can echo for a lifetime. A gentle person may still feel anger in such moments. They are not made of stone. They may feel their chest tighten. They may feel the old desire to defend themselves. They may think of many sharp replies. But somewhere within, another voice appears, quiet but firm. If I say this now, it will not bring peace. It will only make suffering deeper. So they breathe. They lower their tone. They say, "Let us talk when we are calmer." Or "I hear that you are upset." Or sometimes they say nothing at all until the storm passes. To some people, that looks like losing. But in the Dharma, it may be a victory over the most difficult opponent. One's own untrained mind. The same quality appears in the world of online debate. Today, with a phone in the hand, one can enter arguments from morning until night. A stranger says something insulting, and immediately the fingers want to answer. The mind prepares a reply, sharp and brilliant. It wants applause. It wants others to say, "You destroyed them." It wants the pleasure of being right in public. But a person with a gentle and wholesome nature begins to ask, what will this create? Will this comment reduce suffering? Will it help anyone understand? Or will it only add more heat to a fire already burning? There are times when truth should be spoken online. There are times when misinformation, cruelty, and injustice should be challenged. But even then, the manner matters. The heart matters. If we speak from hatred, we may defend something good while feeding something poisonous inside ourselves. So the gentle person learns to pause before replying. They may type a response and then delete it. They may choose clarity instead of sarcasm. They may correct without insulting. They may refuse to join the crowd that mocks one person for entertainment. They may decide that not every provocation deserves their energy. In that quiet restraint, the Dharma is alive. The Dharma is not only in the temple, not only in chanting, not only in bowing before an altar. The Dharma lives in the ordinary second when anger rises and we do not obey it. It lives in the moment when someone gives us the perfect opportunity to be cruel, and we decline. It lives when we protect another person's dignity, even while disagreeing with their view. At work, this sign can also be seen. Every workplace has tension. Someone takes credit for another person's effort. Someone speaks rudely in a meeting. Someone spreads gossip. Someone makes a mistake and tries to blame others. In such environments, the untrained mind quickly becomes defensive. It wants to expose, attack, and punish. It wants to gather allies and create sides. But the person inclined toward the Buddha's path does not like to create unnecessary enemies. They may still address the problem. They may still speak clearly to a manager, set boundaries with a co-worker, or refuse unfair treatment. Non-contention does not mean allowing harm to continue. It does not mean smiling while injustice grows. It means not adding hatred to the situation. It means acting from steadiness rather than revenge. There is a great difference between saying, "This behavior is not acceptable and it needs to stop," and saying, "You are a terrible person and I want everyone to know it." One protects what is right, the other feeds the ego's desire to condemn. A gentle person learns slowly to stand on the side of truth without losing compassion. They may be firm, but not vicious, clear, but not cruel, unshaken but not hateful. This is a rare strength. Many people can shout when they are angry. Many people can insult when they are hurt. Many people can argue endlessly to defend their pride. But to speak with calmness when the heart is burning, to choose words that do not poison the future, to see the humanity of the person standing against us, that requires deep inner cultivation. Even if one has never called it Buddhist practice, it is already close to the spirit of the path. The Buddha often pointed to the danger of harsh speech, divisive speech, and idle speech. Why? Because speech is one of the most common ways karma is created. We may think words disappear after they are spoken, but they do not disappear so easily. They enter memory, they shape relationships, they influence the mind of the speaker and the listener. A single sentence can give someone courage. A single sentence can also make someone carry shame for years. A person with wholesome roots is sensitive to this. They may feel regret quickly after speaking too harshly. Even if no one else notices, their own heart notices. They may lie awake remembering their tone. They may feel the need to apologize. This sensitivity is not a burden. It is a sign that conscience is alive. It means the heart has not become numb. It means the seed of compassion still receives water. Of course, such people are not perfect. They can still lose patience. They can still raise their voice. They can still say things they later regret. Having a gentle nature does not mean never experiencing anger. The difference is that they do not worship anger. They do not make anger their identity. They do not say, "This is just who I am, so everyone must accept my harshness." Instead, they feel the pain that anger causes, and they want to learn another way. This desire to learn another way is already a doorway to the Dharma. There are moments in life when the most powerful response is not a long explanation, but a peaceful silence. Not the silence of resentment, where we withdraw in order to punish. Not the silence of fear, where we abandon truth because we are afraid. But the silence of wisdom, where we understand that this moment is too hot for words, and speaking now would only create more harm. Such silence has dignity. It gives time for the mind to cool. It allows compassion to return. Then when the time is right, speech can come, and when it comes, it can be simple. What happened hurt me. I do not want us to speak to each other this way. I am willing to listen, but not if we are insulting each other. Let us find a better way. These are not weak sentences. They are strong because they do not abandon either truth or kindness. In the Buddha's path, peace is not passivity. Peace is disciplined love. It is the refusal to let hatred drive the hands, the mouth, or the heart. It is the courage to stop the wheel of harm, even when that wheel is moving through us. If someone is being abused, exploited, or oppressed, the Dharma does not ask them to remain silent in the name of gentleness. Compassion includes oneself. Wisdom includes protection. To avoid quarrels does not mean to tolerate cruelty. It means we do not become cruel while responding to cruelty. This balance is important. Some people use spiritual language to avoid necessary conversations. They say, "I do not want conflict," but actually, they are afraid of discomfort. They allow resentment to build. They say yes when they mean no. They smile while their heart becomes heavy. This is not true non-contention. This is suppression. And suppression does not bring peace. It only hides suffering until it becomes something else. True gentleness has honesty within it. It can say no. It can walk away. It can speak the truth. It can protect boundaries. But it does all of this without the wish to destroy. That is the difference. The gentle heart does not enjoy another person's downfall. It does not celebrate humiliation. It does not feel nourished by revenge. Even when it must be firm, it remembers that the other person too is caught in causes and conditions. The other person too suffers from ignorance, fear, craving, and pain. When we see this, our way of arguing changes. We begin to ask not only, how can I prove my point, but how can I reduce suffering here? Sometimes reducing suffering means speaking. Sometimes it means listening. Sometimes it means leaving. Sometimes it means admitting, I was wrong. Sometimes it means accepting that the other person is not ready to understand. And sometimes it means forgiving, not because the action was right, but because we do not want to carry the burning coal any longer. A gentle person often brings peace without announcing it. In a group where voices are rising, they may speak one calm sentence, and the room changes. In a family where everyone is blaming, they may say, "Let us not hurt each other more than we already have." In a workplace where people gossip, they may choose not to add another unkind word. In a friendship where misunderstanding grows, they may reach out first, not from weakness, but from love. These small acts are not small in the life of the spirit. They are seeds, and when repeated over time, they form character. A person becomes known as someone safe to speak to, someone who does not twist words, someone who does not delight in exposing faults, someone whose presence softens the air. Such a person may not speak much about religion, but their way of living already carries a fragrance of Dharma. The world is full of noise. Many people are trained to react quickly, judge quickly, attack quickly. But the path of awakening asks for another rhythm. It asks us to slow down enough to see the suffering behind anger, the fear behind arrogance, the wounded child behind the adult who shouts. It asks us to remember that every being wants happiness, even when they search for it in confused ways. It asks us to let compassion guide the tongue. If you recognize this quality in yourself, cherish it. Do not let the world convince you that your gentleness is useless. Do not think that because you avoid quarrels, you are less strong than those who dominate through force. A peaceful heart is not an ordinary treasure. It may be the result of many lifetimes of learning not to harm. It may be the sign of roots that have grown quietly beneath the surface, waiting for the rain of Dharma. And if you do not yet have this quality strongly, do not be discouraged. It can be cultivated. Begin with one conversation, one pause, one breath before replying, one decision not to insult, one willingness to listen beyond your own pride. Each time you choose peace without abandoning truth, you water the wholesome roots within you. Each time you refuse to turn speech into a weapon, you come closer to the path of the wise. A life without quarrels does not mean a life without disagreement. It means disagreement no longer needs to become hatred. It means truth no longer needs to become violence. It means the heart is learning how to remain open even in difficulty. And when a heart no longer seeks to defeat others, something beautiful begins to happen. The energy once spent on fighting becomes available for kindness. The hands that were once ready to push away become ready to support. The mouth that once wanted to win begins to comfort. A heart that does not seek quarrels often becomes a heart that wants to give, to help, and to share whatever goodness it has. There is a kind of goodness that does not make noise. It does not stand in the center of the room, asking to be noticed. It does not need applause, recognition, or the sweet taste of being praised as a good person. It simply moves when suffering appears. It simply opens when another life is in need. This is the joy of giving and sharing. In the heart of a person with wholesome roots, generosity often arises naturally, almost like breathing. They may not have studied many scriptures. They may not yet understand all the deep meanings of karma, emptiness, or liberation. They may not even call themselves religious, and yet, when they see someone lacking food, lacking warmth, lacking comfort, lacking hope, something inside them cannot remain still. Their heart leans forward, their hands want to help. Their mind begins to ask, what can I do? What can I offer? How can I make this person suffer a little less? This is a beautiful sign, because a heart that knows how to give is a heart not completely imprisoned by the self. It is not trapped only in the narrow room of me and mine. Of course, such a person still has concerns, still has personal needs, still may worry about money, time, family, and the future. But even in the middle of those worries, they can still remember others. They can still feel the pain of another being. They can still loosen their grip and share something from what they have. Sometimes the gift is money. Sometimes it is a blanket, a ride, a helping hand, a quiet visit, a patient ear. Sometimes it is forgiveness given to someone who made a mistake. Sometimes it is encouragement offered to a person standing at the edge of despair. Sometimes it is simply sitting beside someone and not leaving them alone with their sadness. In Buddhism, giving is called dana. But dana is not merely charity in the ordinary sense. It is not just the act of taking something from one hand and placing it into another. Dana is a training of the heart. It is a way of softening greed, loosening attachment, and learning to trust that life is not meant to be held too tightly. Every sincere act of giving becomes a small liberation. Each time we give with a clear and kind intention, a knot inside us becomes a little less tight. Greed whispers, "Keep everything, you may not have enough. Others are not your concern." Attachment whispers, "This belongs to me, I worked for it, I must protect it." Fear whispers, "If I give, I will lose." But generosity answers gently, "There is enough to share. My happiness does not need to be built on another person's lack. What I release with kindness returns as peace within my own heart." This does not mean giving carelessly or beyond one's capacity. Buddha's path is not a path of foolishness. True generosity is not self-destruction. It is not giving until resentment grows, nor helping in a way that creates dependence, pride, or harm. Wise giving carries both compassion and understanding. It knows when to offer, how to offer, and what will truly help. But beneath that wisdom, there is always a warm current of goodwill. There is the wish to relieve suffering. A person with wholesome roots may feel joy even in the smallest acts of sharing. They may be eating lunch and notice someone beside them who has nothing, and without making the moment heavy, they divide their food, half for themselves, half for the other. Perhaps the food is simple, a bowl of rice, a piece of fruit, a small sandwich. But when given sincerely, that simple food carries more than taste. It carries human tenderness. It tells the hungry person, "You are seen. You are not forgotten." There are people who help struggling relatives quietly. They know a younger sibling is having difficulty paying rent, or an elderly parent is trying to hide the cost of medicine, or a cousin has lost work and is too ashamed to ask. So they give what they can. They do not announce it to the whole family. They do not turn the gift into a chain around the other person's neck. They do not say, "Remember what I did for you." They simply help, because family suffering touches their heart. There are people who offer their seat to an elder without hesitation. On a bus, in a waiting room, in a crowded hall, they see someone tired, someone weak, someone carrying the weight of years. They rise quietly. It is a small gesture, but small gestures reveal the shape of the heart. In that moment they are not thinking, "Will anyone admire me?" They are simply responding to life with respect. There are people who donate to a temple, not because they want their name carved on a wall, not because they want others to think they are devout, but because they feel gratitude. They understand that a temple is more than a building. It is a place where weary people come to bow, to breathe, to remember goodness. It is a place where teachings are preserved, where incense rises, where bells awaken sleeping hearts. When they contribute even a little, they feel they are supporting a lamp that may guide many people through darkness. And there are people who feed animals with the same gentleness. A stray dog shivering in the rain, a cat searching for scraps, birds gathering near an empty courtyard. To some, these lives may seem small, unimportant, easily ignored, but to a compassionate heart, every life trembles with the wish to be safe. Every being fears pain. Every creature wants to live. So they place a bowl of water outside on a hot day. They leave a little food. They avoid harming insects when they can. They treat the vulnerable not as objects, but as fellow travelers in the vast field of existence. Generosity also lives in words. Sometimes a person does not need money from us. They need one sentence that helps them endure another day. They need to hear, "You are not a failure." They need to hear, "I know it is hard, but please keep going." Need to hear, "I am here." A few kind words, spoken at the right time, can become medicine. We may forget we said them, but the person who received them may remember for years. In a moment when their mind was dark, our words may have become a small candle. This too is dana. To give attention is dana. To listen without rushing is dana. To protect someone's dignity is dana. To hold back a cruel comment is dana. To share knowledge without arrogance is dana. To forgive a sincere mistake is dana. To give others the benefit of understanding before judgment is dana. The world often teaches us to measure generosity by size. How much money was given? How large was the donation? How visible was the act? But on the spiritual path, the depth of giving is measured by intention. A small gift offered with sincerity may carry more merit than a large gift offered for fame. A poor person sharing one piece of bread may reveal more purity than a wealthy person giving much while looking down on the receiver. The heart behind the hand is what matters. If we give in order to be praised, our generosity is mixed with hunger. If we give in order to control others, our generosity becomes a hidden chain. If we give while making the receiver feel inferior, our generosity wounds even as it helps. If we give only so others will owe us loyalty, then the gift is not truly free. It becomes a transaction wearing the clothing of kindness. This is why the practice of giving asks us to look inward. When we offer help, can we do it without making ourselves large? Can we support someone without reminding them of their weakness? Can we give without secretly demanding love, obedience, or admiration in return? Can we release the gift after giving it, like placing a flower into a river and allowing the current to carry it away? A wholesome giver learns slowly. At first, perhaps we still want recognition. We still feel disappointed when no one thanks us properly. We still feel hurt when our kindness is misunderstood. This is human. We do not need to condemn ourselves for it. But if we continue to practice, generosity becomes cleaner. The heart becomes less concerned with being seen and more concerned with relieving suffering. The joy moves from the outside to the inside. We no longer need applause because the act itself becomes peaceful. There is a special happiness that arises after giving sincerely. It is quiet but deep. The body may feel lighter. The mind may become clearer. We may walk away with nothing added to our possessions, and yet something within us feels enriched. This is because giving opens the heart, and an open heart suffers less from the loneliness of self-centered living. When people live only for themselves, they may gather many things and still feel poor. They may have full rooms but empty hearts. They may protect their comforts so fiercely that they become afraid of everyone. But those who know how to share often discover a different kind of wealth. They may not own much, but they are connected. They belong to the web of life. Their joy is not locked inside personal gain. It flows outward, and because it flows outward, it returns inward as peace. This is why generosity is a sign of wholesome roots in the Buddha's path. It shows that the seeds of compassion have already begun to sprout. It shows that the person is capable of seeing beyond the illusion of separateness. They may not speak beautifully about Dharma, but their actions already carry the fragrance of Dharma. They may not yet have taken refuge formally, but their heart already bows to kindness. They may not know the word dana, but they have practiced it many times. Think of a mother who keeps the best portion of food for her child and eats the simpler part herself. Think of a friend who stays awake late into the night to comfort someone grieving. Think of a worker who, though tired, helps a new colleague learn without impatience. Think of a neighbor who notices an elderly person living alone and brings soup without expecting anything back. Think of a child who gives away a favorite toy because another child has none. These moments may not appear in history books. No one may record them. No one may build statues for them. But in the unseen field of karma, such acts matter. They shape the heart. They create conditions for future goodness. They weaken the old habit of grasping and strengthen the noble habit of compassion. Of course, generosity must be guided by wisdom. There are times when giving money may feed someone's harmful habit. There are times when saying yes may allow another person to continue acting irresponsibly. There are times when the kindest gift is not what the person asks for, but what truly helps them awaken. Buddhist giving is not blind indulgence. It is not being used, manipulated, or exhausted. It is compassion with clear eyes. To help wisely means we do not give with resentment. If resentment is growing, we pause and examine our limits. To help wisely means we do not give in order to feel superior. If pride is growing, we return to humility. To help wisely means we do not give what causes harm. If harm may arise, we search for another form of support. Sometimes we give material help. Sometimes we give guidance. Sometimes we give silence. Sometimes we give distance, so that another person may learn responsibility. But even when we cannot give what is requested, we can still give respect. We can refuse without cruelty. We can set boundaries without hatred. We can say no while still wishing the other person well. This, too, is a mature form of generosity, because it gives truth without poison. A person with deepening wholesome roots gradually discovers that giving is not limited to special occasions. It becomes a way of living. They give patience in traffic. They give understanding in conversation. They give space when someone is overwhelmed. They give appreciation to those who are often ignored. They give honesty without harshness. They give their presence to the present moment. And the more they give, the more they understand that nothing in this life is truly possessed forever. Money comes and goes. Health changes. Relationships shift. The body ages. Circumstances rise and fall like waves. If we cling too tightly, we suffer with every change. But if we learn to share, we live with more grace. We begin to see that we are only caretakers of what passes through our hands. Wealth, talent, time, knowledge, love. All of these are entrusted to us for a while. The question is not only how much can I keep? The deeper question is, how much goodness can pass through me before I leave this world? In this way, generosity prepares the heart for liberation. It teaches us release. It teaches us non-attachment not as a cold idea, but as a warm practice. Every time we give sincerely, we loosen the belief that happiness comes from holding. We discover that happiness can also come from offering. We discover that the heart expands when it is used for others. And perhaps this is why, when we meet truly generous people, we feel safe near them. Their presence is not tight. Their eyes are not always calculating advantage. Their kindness does not feel like a performance. Around them, we remember that human beings can still be beautiful. We remember that the world, though filled with suffering, is also filled with quiet hands helping in the dark. If you recognize this joy of giving within yourself, cherish it. Do not let the harshness of the world make you ashamed of your tenderness. Do not let ungrateful people turn your heart into stone. Learn wisdom, yes. Learn boundaries, yes. But do not abandon the natural impulse to share goodness. That impulse is precious. It may be one of the clearest signs that your heart has been touched by wholesome roots from long ago. And if you feel that your generosity is still small, begin where you are. Give one kind word. Share one meal. Offer one sincere prayer. Help one person without announcing it. Protect one living being from fear. Give a little time to someone who is lonely. Give a little forgiveness to someone who is learning. Give a little gentleness to yourself as well. No sincere gift is meaningless. A drop of water may seem small, but many drops can cool the earth. A candle may seem small, but one candle can light another, and then another, until a dark room is no longer dark. In the same way, one generous act can awaken another generous act. One softened heart can soften another. One person who gives without selfishness becomes a quiet blessing to the world. And when generosity matures, it often widens into a tenderness that embraces not only human beings, but animals, trees, rivers, and all forms of life. And when the heart becomes generous, it does not know how to stop at the boundary of mine and not mine. At first, perhaps, we only know how to love those who love us back. We care for our parents, our children, our close friends, the people whose faces are familiar, whose names are dear to us. This is natural. This is the first circle of tenderness. But in a person with wholesome roots in the Buddha's path, that circle slowly expands. One day, they find themselves moved by the suffering of someone they do not know. a tired worker sitting alone by the roadside, an old woman carrying something too heavy for her age, a child crying in a market while the crowd passes by, a beggar whose eyes seem to hold a whole season of hunger. They may not have the power to change the entire world, but their heart cannot remain cold. Something inside them trembles. Something inside them whispers, "This being also suffers. This being also wishes to be safe. This being also wants happiness." This is not weakness. In the light of the Dharma, sensitivity to suffering is a noble sign. A heart that can still feel pain for another being has not been hardened by selfishness. A heart that cannot bear cruelty has not forgotten its original softness. A person who turns away from violence, who feels sorrow when animals are harmed, who respects even small lives, who sees trees not as objects but as living companions of the earth, is already practicing reverence for life. Such a person may not always speak about Buddhism. They may not use beautiful words like compassion, loving kindness, or non-harming, but their hands reveal their inner nature. When an insect crawls across the floor, they do not immediately crush it. They pause. They find a piece of paper, a leaf, a small cup, and gently carry it outside. Someone may laugh and say, "It is only a bug." But to that person, life is not measured by size. Fear is fear, whether it belongs to a human being, a bird, a dog, or a tiny creature trying to survive. This is one of the quiet signs of good roots. Not a dramatic miracle, not a loud display of holiness, but a simple refusal to harm when harming is unnecessary. The Buddha taught again and again that all beings fear violence, all beings tremble before death, all beings cherish life. When we truly understand this, even a small act becomes sacred. To spare a life, however small, is to bow before the mystery of existence. Perhaps you have experienced this yourself. You see a wounded bird on the ground, unable to fly. Most people walk past, busy with their own errands, but you cannot. You feel something tighten in your chest. You kneel down. You do not know exactly what to do, but you want to help. You search for water, a safe box, a person who knows how to care for animals. And even if the bird does not survive, your heart has already taken a step toward awakening, because it did not abandon suffering when suffering appeared before it. Or perhaps one morning, you notice a plant in the corner of your home, its leaves drooping, its soil dry. It is not crying out. It cannot ask for help, yet you feel responsible. You bring water, you move it closer to light, you touch its leaves gently, as if apologizing for forgetting. And when, after a few days, the plant becomes green again, something in you smiles. This too is compassion. This too is mindfulness. This too is a form of listening. Some people think compassion belongs only to grand acts, saving thousands of lives, giving away great wealth, building hospitals, temples, schools, and shelters. These acts are beautiful, of course, but compassion also lives in small daily gestures. It lives in the way we close a door softly so we do not frighten a sleeping child. It lives in the way we speak patiently to an elderly person who repeats the same story many times. It lives in the way we avoid wasting food because we know someone else is hungry. It lives in the way we turn off water that is running for no reason, because rivers are not endless servants. It lives in the way we pick up trash on a path, not because someone is watching, but because the earth has carried us patiently for so long. A person with roots in the Dharma often feels that the world is alive in a deep and intimate way. The forest is not merely wood. The river is not merely water. The mountain is not merely stone. The wind, the rain, the soil, the birdsong at dawn, the shade of a tree on a hot day, all of these are part of the great web that supports our breath. When such a person sees nature being destroyed carelessly, they feel sorrow. Not the sorrow of anger alone, but the sorrow of recognition. They understand that when we harm the earth, we are not harming something separate from us. We are cutting into the very body that feeds us, shelters us, and allows us to live. This kind of compassion is an expanding circle. It begins with affection for those closest to us, then opens toward strangers, then toward animals, plants, rivers, mountains, and all fragile forms of life. The more deeply one sees, the harder it becomes to live only for oneself. The suffering of the world is no longer distant. It comes near, it enters the heart, it asks us to become more awake. But here, we must also understand something important. Compassion does not mean drowning in sorrow. If we open our heart to every pain in the world without wisdom, we may become exhausted, overwhelmed, or bitter. We may look at cruelty and begin to hate cruel people. We may see ignorance and despise those who do not yet understand. We may become so hurt by suffering that we lose the strength to help. This is why, in the Buddhist path, compassion must walk together with wisdom. Wisdom teaches us that suffering has causes. Cruelty does not arise from nowhere. It is born from ignorance, fear, greed, habit, and wounds passed from one generation to another. This does not excuse harmful actions, but it helps the heart avoid hatred. A person who harms animals, destroys nature, or speaks cruelly may not yet understand the life inside other beings. Their awareness is still narrow, their heart is still covered. If we respond to them with hatred, we add another fire to the world. But if we respond with steadiness, clarity, and patient action, compassion becomes stronger than anger. True compassion is not weak. It does not simply weep and do nothing. It does not look away from harm. It protects when protection is needed. It speaks when silence would allow cruelty to continue. It gives, rescues, teaches, comforts, and repairs. But it tries not to poison itself with hatred. This is difficult, very difficult. Yet is the training of a noble heart. You may not be able to save every animal, heal every person, restore every forest, or stop every act of violence. No single human body can carry the whole ocean of suffering alone. But you can choose the way you meet life today. You can feed one hungry creature. You can refrain from buying what is born from cruelty. You can use less, waste less, harm less. You can speak kindly to someone who feels invisible. You can plant something. You can protect something. You can teach a child to be gentle with insects, to respect animals, to say thank you to the earth. You can be one small place in the world where fear decreases. And do not think this is insignificant. A child who learns not to harm a small creature may grow into an adult who refuses to harm people. A family that learns to avoid waste may become more grateful for food, water, and labor. A person who practices kindness toward animals may become more patient with human weakness. Compassion does not remain in one corner of life. Once awakened, it spreads. The hand that learns to be gentle with a wounded bird may become gentle with a grieving friend. The eyes that learn to notice a wilting plant may also notice a lonely neighbor. The heart that learns to protect life in small ways becomes less willing to create suffering in large ways. This is why love for people, animals, nature, and life is a profound sign of good roots. It shows that the illusion of separateness has begun to soften. We begin to see that we are not isolated beings walking alone through an empty world. We breathe because trees breathe with us. We eat because soil, rain, sunlight, farmers, animals, and countless unseen conditions support us. We live because life gives itself to us in every moment. To realize this is to become humble. To become humble is to become grateful, and gratitude naturally becomes care. In the Buddha's path, compassion is not merely a feeling. It is a way of seeing. When we see clearly, we understand that every being is seeking happiness and trying to avoid pain. Even those who behave badly are often moving under the pressure of confusion. Even those who appear strong may be carrying fear. Even animals we ignore have their own small world of hunger, protection, affection, and survival. Even trees lean toward light. Even flowers open when conditions allow. Life everywhere is reaching, trembling, adapting, longing to continue. When your heart feels this, you may sometimes cry more easily. You may feel moved by simple things. A dog waiting faithfully for its owner. An old man feeding pigeons in the park. a child placing a fallen worm back into the grass after rain, a field of trees standing silently beneath the sky. Do not be ashamed of this softness. The world often teaches us to be hard, to be indifferent, to protect ourselves by not caring too much. But the Dharma teaches another strength, the strength to remain tender without collapsing, to remain kind without becoming naive, to remain open without losing balance. A compassionate person may look ordinary from the outside. They may go to work, cook meals, pay bills, care for family, and live among many responsibilities. Yet inside, their relationship with life is different. They hesitate before causing harm. They feel remorse when they are careless. They are not entertained by cruelty. They do not enjoy humiliating the weak. They cannot laugh easily at suffering. They may still make mistakes, but when they do, their conscience awakens quickly. Their heart reminds them, be gentler, be more aware. This life is not yours alone. And if this compassion is already present in you, even in small ways, please recognize it as something precious. Do not dismiss it. Do not let the harshness of the world convince you that kindness is foolish. A tender heart is not an accident. It may be the fruit of many lifetimes of wholesome seeds, many moments of giving, many prayers, many encounters with the Dharma, whether remembered or forgotten. Protect that tenderness. Nourish it with mindfulness. Let it grow with wisdom. When you see suffering, breathe first, let the heart feel, but do not let it shatter. Ask gently, what can I do here and now? Sometimes the answer is to help directly. Sometimes it is to speak. Sometimes it is to step back and support those who can do more. Sometimes it is simply to pray with sincerity, to hold a being in compassion when no outward action is possible. Even a prayer, if born from a selfless heart, has its own quiet power. It shapes the mind, it waters the roots, it keeps us from becoming numb. The more we practice in this way, the more compassion becomes natural. We no longer need to force ourselves to care. We care because we see. We protect because we understand. We give because we remember how much we have received. Gradually, our presence becomes less harmful, more peaceful. Animals may feel safer around us. Children may sense gentleness in our voice. Elderly people may feel respected in our company. Even the spaces we enter may become a little calmer, because a heart trained in compassion carries a quiet fragrance. Such a heart does not belong only to monks, nuns, saints, or people living in temples. It can bloom in anyone. A young person who refuses cruelty, a mother who teaches her child kindness, a farmer who respects the land, a driver who slows down for an animal crossing the road, a student who shares food with a hungry friend, a worker who plants a tree after a long day, a stranger who chooses mercy when no one would blame them for indifference. These are not small things. These are signs that the Buddha's teaching is not far away. It is already touching the way we walk, speak, eat, spend, choose, and respond. It is already alive in the moment we recognize another being's fear as worthy of care. It is already alive when we refuse to make suffering worse. And as compassion deepens, something beautiful happens within us. The heart that truly loves life finds it harder to remain angry for long. Anger may still arise, because we are human, because habits are strong, because the world is imperfect and our patience is not yet complete. But in a heart watered by kindness, anger begins to lose its home. It cannot settle comfortably where mercy has taken root. It cannot burn for long where understanding keeps bringing cool rain. Such compassion also changes the way anger lives inside us. Even when anger arises, it cannot remain for long in a heart trained by kindness. Anger, in itself, is proof that a person has no virtue. Sometimes we imagine that a spiritual person must always be calm, always smiling, always soft in speech, never wounded by anything. But if we look honestly at our own hearts, and if we look tenderly at the lives of others, we know this is not so simple. A person with wholesome roots is still a human being. They still have memories, sensitivities, limits, and old wounds. They can feel hurt when someone speaks harshly. They can feel disappointed when trust is broken. They can feel offended when treated unfairly, or lonely when misunderstood by those they love. The sign of a heart close to the Dharma is not that anger never appears. The sign is that anger cannot stay for very long. It may rise like a sudden flame, but it does not become a forest fire. It may shake the chest, tighten the jaw, sharpen the tongue for a moment, but somewhere inside, another awareness soon begins to speak. Something quiet remembers. This anger is painful. This anger is burning me first. This anger, if I keep feeding it, will become karma. It will become words I regret, actions I cannot take back, distance I never meant to create. For someone with deep wholesome roots, anger may visit, but it does not become a permanent guest. Resentment does not easily build a home in such a heart, even if they are upset, even if they withdraw for a while, even if tears come, there is a softness beneath the storm. They may tell themselves, I am hurt, but they cannot easily say, I want this person to suffer. They may need time, but they do not enjoy hatred. They may struggle, but they feel the heaviness of holding a grudge. And because they feel that heaviness, they eventually seek release. This is a very precious sign, because in ordinary life, anger can be strangely addictive. When someone has harmed us, the mind repeats the story again and again. It replays the insult, enlarges the injury, gathers evidence, prepares arguments, imagines revenge, and calls it justice. The more we think about it, the more sotted it becomes. A single sentence spoken in one moment can become a wound carried for years. A misunderstanding can become a wall. A disappointment can become a lifetime of bitterness. And the person who hurt us may have moved on, may not even remember clearly what happened, while we continue to drink the poison of resentment day after day. The Buddha's teaching invites us to see this clearly. Anger feels powerful, but it is also suffering. It promises protection, but often imprisons the one who carries it. So it says, hold on or you will be weak. But the Dharma gently asks, if holding on destroys your peace, is that strength, it says. Do not forgive or they will win. But wisdom asks, if their action controls your mind for months or years, have you really won? To release anger is not to say that harm was acceptable. It is not to pretend that betrayal did not hurt. It is not to erase responsibility or allow abuse to continue. True forgiveness is not blindness. It is the decision not to live chained to the fire. A person touched by Dharma begins to understand this in their bones. They may still feel anger, but soon they see its cost. They notice how it changes their breathing, how it disturbs sleep, how it makes food lose its taste, how it darkens even beautiful moments. They notice how one unresolved resentment can quietly poison many other relationships. They notice that when anger is held for too long, the face becomes tense, the eyes lose gentleness, and the heart becomes suspicious of life itself. And because their heart still longs for peace, they begin to let go. Imagine a family member speaking sharply at the end of a long day. Perhaps the words are unfair. Perhaps they touch an old wound. In that first moment, anger rises quickly. The heart says, why do you always speak to me this way? Do you not see how much I have done? The mouth wants to answer with equal sharpness. The body becomes hot. But then, after a few breaths, another perception appears. Maybe this person is tired. Maybe they are carrying fear they do not know how to express. Maybe I also have spoken like this before when I was overwhelmed. This does not make the harsh words right, but it softens the urge to strike back. Instead of turning one wound into two, the person pauses. Maybe they step away. Maybe they speak later. Maybe they say, your words hurt me, but I do not want us to keep hurting each other. That pause is already a light of Dharma. Or imagine a friend who betrays trust. This kind of pain can go deep because friendship opens a door in the heart. When trust is broken, anger often comes mixed with grief. A person may feel humiliated, foolish, abandoned. They may think, I will never trust anyone again. For a while, this feeling may be strong. But in a heart with wholesome roots, the anger is not allowed to become a permanent identity. Slowly, they begin to ask deeper questions. What was I attached to? What expectation did I hold? What lesson is hidden here? Can I protect my boundaries without poisoning my heart? Can I learn to be wiser but not colder? Can I step away from what is harmful, while still wishing that this person someday awakens from their confusion? This is not easy. Letting go is rarely instant. Sometimes the mind releases a grudge in the morning and picks it up again by evening. Sometimes we think we have forgiven, and then one small reminder brings the old fire back. But the important sign is the direction of the heart. Does it keep choosing hatred, or does it keep returning to peace? Does it enjoy resentment, or does it feel sorrow when anger lasts too long? A person with good roots may stumble many times, but they do not feel at home in bitterness. Something in them keeps looking for the cool shade of understanding. In the workplace too, anger often tests us. Someone takes credit for our effort. A superior speaks disrespectfully. A colleague acts selfishly. The mind immediately wants recognition, correction, revenge. It says, I must show them they cannot treat me this way. And sometimes, yes, we must speak up. The Dharma does not ask us to become passive or voiceless. Right speech can be firm. Right action can set boundaries. Compassion does not mean allowing injustice to continue, but there is a difference between responding from clarity and reacting from hatred. One protects dignity. The other spreads suffering. One speaks because truth is needed. The other speaks because the ego wants to wound. A person near the Buddha's path begins to feel this difference. Before answering, they may take one mindful breath. They may ask, if I speak now, will my words heal or deepen the harm? Am I trying to solve the situation, or am I trying to punish? That one question can change the whole direction of karma. It can prevent an email written in rage. It can stop a cruel sentence at the edge of the tongue. It can keep a difficult conversation from becoming a battlefield. Even if the anger is still there, awareness has entered. And when awareness enters, anger begins to lose its blindness. Even in small daily situations, this sign reveals itself. Traffic is a simple temple for seeing the mind. Someone cuts in front of us. Someone honks impatiently. Someone moves slowly when we are already late. Anger rises so easily in these moments because the ego feels blocked, challenged, disrespected. But then, if wholesome roots are alive, the heart remembers, this is just a moment. This person, too, is trying to go somewhere. Perhaps they are careless. Perhaps they are suffering. Perhaps they are just unaware. Is this brief irritation worth losing my peace? Is it worth carrying into my home, my meal, my evening, my prayer? When the mind sees impermanence, anger becomes harder to maintain. The person who insulted us is impermanent. The situation is impermanent. Our own feeling is impermanent. This body, this breath, this day, this life, all are passing. How strange it is to spend our limited time feeding resentment. How fragile everything is. The one we are angry with may be gone someday. We ourselves may be gone someday. In that light, many grudges begin to look unbearably heavy, not because the pain was unreal, but because life is too precious to be spent in the prison of replayed suffering. Karma, too, becomes a mirror. A person with wholesome roots often reflects, if I answer anger with anger, what seed am I planting? If I hold hatred in my heart, what kind of future am I watering? If I train my mind in resentment, what will my mind become? This reflection is not fear in a crude sense. It is responsibility. It is the understanding that every thought, every word, every intention shapes the heart. Hatred repeated becomes habit. Patience repeated becomes strength. Forgiveness repeated becomes freedom. And compassion opens another door. When someone harms us, it is natural to see only their harmful action. But when the heart becomes wider, it begins to wonder about the suffering behind that action. What pain makes a person speak so cruelly? What fear makes them need to dominate? What ignorance makes them betray kindness? What emptiness makes them chase control or victory at the expense of love? Again, this does not excuse harm. Understanding is not the same as permission. But when we see that the one who harms is also trapped in causes and conditions, hatred begins to soften. We may still keep distance, we may still say no, but inside, the wish for revenge weakens, and the wish for awakening appears. This is one of the quiet beauties of the Dharma. It does not demand that we become saints overnight. It simply teaches us to see suffering more clearly. At first, we notice our anger after we have spoken harshly. Later, we notice it while we are speaking. Later still, we notice it before it becomes speech. And one day, perhaps, anger rises like a wave and dissolves almost at once, because the heart has learned not to cling. This is training. This is cultivation. This is the ripening of wholesome roots. There is great tenderness in someone who cannot stay angry for long. They may be strong, but their strength is not cruel. They may be hurt, but they do not want to become hateful. They may remember what happened, but they do not polish the memory into a weapon. Even when they need to walk away, they try not to curse the one they leave behind. Even when they cannot reconcile, they still hope that all beings, including the difficult ones, may someday be free from ignorance and suffering. Such a person brings peace into the world in invisible ways. They end arguments that could have lasted for generations. They refuse to pass bitterness to their children. They stop one harsh word from becoming 10. They do not add more fire to a burning place. In their small acts of releasing, the world becomes a little less burdened, and though no one may praise them, though no one may even know the battle they fought inside, the merit is real. The heart knows. The Dharma knows. So if you from that anger comes, but you cannot keep it for long, do not despise yourself for the anger. Look more deeply. See the goodness in the part of you that wants to return to peace. See the Dharma seed that refuses to grow in the soil of hatred. See the quiet wisdom that whispers, "Let this go. Do not carry it farther. Do not let one moment of pain become a lifetime of darkness." Ask yourself gently, when anger arises, what am I protecting right now? Is it dignity or is it pride? What pain is hidden beneath this reaction? What pain might be hidden in the other person? If I hold this grudge, what will it cost my sleep, my prayer, my joy, my freedom? Can I learn from this without hardening? Can I set a boundary without hatred? Can I wish myself well and still not wish harm upon another? These questions are not weak. They are the work of a courageous heart. Anyone can be angry. Anyone can strike back. Anyone can carry resentment and call it justice. But to feel the flame and choose not to feed it, to be wounded and still protect the purity of one's own mind, to release another from the prison of our hatred, so that we ourselves may step out of that prison too, this is a noble sign. A heart like this is already walking toward the Buddha, even if the feet have not yet reached a temple. It has begun to understand that peace is more precious than being right in every argument. It has begun to see that hatred never truly heals a wound. It has begun to taste the freedom of letting go. And when a person's heart becomes sensitive to harm, another sign appears clearly. If they wound another being, they cannot simply forget it. Consider a father who, in a moment of exhaustion, snapped at his young daughter for interrupting him one too many times. The words were not violent, only impatient, but her small face fell in a way he had never seen before. That night, after she had gone to sleep, he sat alone in the kitchen replaying the sound of her voice going quiet. He was not a cruel man. He loved her more than his own life. Yet that single sharp sentence stayed with him, returning again and again like a splinter beneath the skin. In the morning he knelt beside her bed before she woke and simply said, "I am sorry for last night. You did nothing wrong." She barely remembered the moment, but he never forgot it. That small private remorse, unseen by anyone else, was already the Dharma quietly working within him. Perhaps the words were spoken in anger, quickly, sharply, like a stone thrown before the hand even knew what it was doing. Perhaps the face of the other person changed in that moment. Their eyes lowered, their voice became quiet, and outwardly the conversation moved on. But later, when the room became still, when the day lost its noise, that face returned. The words returned, the tone returned, and somewhere inside, the heart could not rest. This is not always visible to others. A person may smile, continue working, answer messages, eat a meal, speak as if nothing happened, but beneath the ordinary movements of life, something is stirring, a soft pain, a heaviness, a question that keeps rising again and again. Why did I say that? Why did I do that? Did I hurt them more than I realized? This kind of remorse is not a punishment sent from outside. It is the voice of conscience still alive within. It is the heart refusing to become hard. And in the light of the Dharma, this is not a small thing. A person who can feel regret after causing harm is not lost. They are not empty. They are not beyond repair. In fact, such regret, when understood correctly, can become the doorway to transformation. There is a noble pain in remorse. It is uncomfortable, yes. It can make the chest feel tight. It can make sleep difficult. It can make the mind replay a moment many times, wishing it could return and choose differently. But not every pain is an enemy. Some pains are warnings. Some pains are teachers. Some pains are like the burning sensation when the hand touches fire. They teach us not to repeat what brings suffering. A person with wholesome roots in the Dharma often feels this pain deeply. They may not be able to step on a small insect without feeling sorrow. They may not be able to see an animal frightened by their carelessness without feeling a wound in their own heart. They may speak harshly to a parent, a partner, a friend, or a child, and even if pride prevents them from apologizing right away, something inside cannot fully agree with what they did. They may betray trust, neglect someone who needed them, dismiss another person's suffering, or act selfishly in a moment of blindness, and afterward, even if no one accuses them, their own heart becomes the witness. This is a very important sign, because there are people who can harm and immediately justify it. They say they deserved it. They say everyone does this. They say it was nothing. They close the door of reflection before the truth can enter. But one whose roots of goodness are ripening cannot close that door so easily. Even when the mind creates excuses, the conscience quietly asks, but was it kind? Was it necessary? Did it create suffering? Sometimes remorse arrives in the middle of the night. The body is tired, but the mind will not sleep. A person lies there, staring into the darkness, remembering a message sent in anger. At the time, each sentence felt justified. The fingers moved quickly, the heart was burning. But now, in the silence, the anger has cooled, and what remains is the memory of cruelty. They remember the words they chose, not because they were true, but because they would hurt. They remember the moment they pressed send. They remember the reply that never came. In such a moment, the heart may whisper, I wish I had waited. I wish I had breathed. I wish I had not let my anger speak for me. This whisper is sacred. It is not yet wisdom fully grown, but it is the seed of wisdom breaking through the soil. Sometimes remorse comes after we neglect someone, not through violence, not through loud conflict, but through absence. Someone reached out and we were too busy. Someone was lonely and we dismissed it. Someone's eyes asked for patience, but we gave irritation. Later, when we understand what they were carrying, regret rises. We realize that harm is not only in what we do. Sometimes harm is also in what we fail to do, when love, kindness, or attention was needed. A person with a living conscience feels this. They may think of an aging mother waiting for a call. They may think of a friend whose sadness was hidden behind jokes. They may think of a child who only wanted a few moments of gentle attention. And when the heart sees clearly, it aches. Not because it wants to drown in sorrow, but because it finally understands. My actions matter, my presence matters, my absence matters too. There is also remorse toward animals and living beings that cannot speak in human words. A person may accidentally step on a small creature and suddenly feel a wave of sadness. Others might say, "It is only an insect," but the gentle heart cannot dismiss life so easily. It sees the tiny body, the brief movement, the fragile existence that was ended or injured through carelessness. And though the world may think this sensitivity is excessive, in the eyes of the Dharma, it reveals tenderness. It reveals a mind beginning to understand that life is precious in every form. This does not mean one becomes paralyzed by every mistake. The Buddha's path is not a path of endless self-condemnation. It is a path of awakening, and awakening requires honesty, not hatred toward oneself. This is why we understand the difference between healthy remorse and destructive guilt. Healthy remorse says, "I have caused harm. Let me see it clearly. Let me repair what can be repaired. Let me learn. Let me become more mindful." Destructive guilt says, "I am terrible. I am hopeless. I can never change." One opens the door to growth. The other locks the heart inside a dark room. The Dharma does not ask us to hate ourselves. Self-hatred is still another form of attachment to the self. It keeps repeating I, my failure, my shame, my unworthiness. But true remorse becomes wider than the self. It remembers the suffering caused. It cares about the one who was hurt. It asks how healing may begin. It accepts responsibility without turning that responsibility into despair. If you have ever hurt someone and then felt deep unease, do not rush to bury that feeling, but also do not let it become a weapon against your own heart. Sit with it gently. Look at it clearly. Ask yourself, what exactly did I do? What suffering may have come from it? What state of mind was I in? Was it anger, jealousy, fear, pride, carelessness, greed? This kind of looking is not meant to shame you. It is meant to awaken you, because every unwholesome action has roots. A harsh word may come from wounded pride. A betrayal may come from desire or fear. A careless act may come from forgetfulness. A neglectful silence may come from self-absorption. When we see the root, we do not excuse the action, but we begin to understand how to prevent it from growing again. Repentance in the Buddhist spirit is not merely saying, "I am sorry," while secretly planning to repeat the same pattern. True repentance has warmth, humility, and direction. First, we acknowledge the act. We stop pretending it was harmless. We stop decorating it with excuses. We allow the truth to be simple. I caused pain. I acted without wisdom. I was not mindful. Then, where possible, we apologize, not to protect our image, not to force the other person to forgive us, not to quickly erase our discomfort, but to offer respect to the one we hurt. A sincere apology does not say, "I am sorry if you felt hurt," as though the wound were only their imagination. It says, "I see that my words or actions caused pain. I regret it. I will try to do better." Such words, when spoken from the heart, already begin to soften karma. But sometimes apology is not possible. The person may be far away. They may not wish to speak. They may have passed from this life, or perhaps approaching them would only disturb them further. In those cases, remorse can still become practice. We can bow inwardly. We can send thoughts of compassion. We can dedicate good actions to their well-being. We can make a vow not to repeat the same harm with others. Making amends is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is a quiet change in conduct. If we have been impatient, we practice listening. If we have been harsh, we practice gentle speech. If we have taken more than we needed, we practice giving. If we have harmed living beings through carelessness, we walk more mindfully, consume more mindfully, live more reverently. The wound of regret becomes the soil where compassion grows. There is something beautiful about a person who becomes more careful, because they know the taste of remorse. They do not want to see that hurt face again. They do not want to feel the heaviness of having betrayed their own goodness. So they pause more often. They breathe before speaking. They ask, "Will this help or harm?" They notice the small lives around them. They become less reckless with words, less careless with promises, less blind to the feelings of others. This is how wholesome roots deepen, not because a person never makes mistakes, but because mistakes become teachers. In ordinary life, people may hide their wrongdoings to appear pure, but on the spiritual path, purity is not pretending we have no stains. Purity is the willingness to wash them away again and again, with honesty, humility, and effort. Even the wish to apologize, but not knowing how can be part of the path. Many people carry unsent apologies in their hearts. They rehearse the words. They fear rejection. They fear reopening pain. They fear appearing weak. But beneath that fear is a noble movement. The heart wants to return to truth. It wants to set down the burden of pride. It wants to honor the suffering it caused. If that is you, begin where you can. Begin with a sincere reflection. Begin with a vow. Begin by becoming kinder today than you were yesterday. And when the time is right, when the mind is calm and the intention is clean, speak simply. Do not over-explain. Do not demand forgiveness. Just offer truth. Sometimes the other person will receive it. Sometimes they will not. But the act of sincere repentance already changes the direction of your heart. And remember to include yourself in compassion. This is difficult for many sincere people. They can forgive others, but they cannot forgive themselves. They replay old mistakes for years. They punish themselves inwardly, believing this proves they are responsible. But endless self-punishment does not heal the one who was harmed. It does not purify the action. It does not create wisdom. It only exhausts the mind and may even lead to more confusion. The Buddha's way is neither denial nor self-torment. It is clear seeing. It is responsibility joined with compassion. We acknowledge the harm, make amends where possible, commit to transformation, and then continue walking. If we fall, we rise. If we forget, we remember. If we cause pain, and we learn to become a source of relief. A conscience that cannot ignore harm is a precious gift. It may feel heavy at times, but it is a sign that the heart has not died to goodness. It means the inner lamp still burns. It means the cries of others can still reach us. It means the suffering of even a small creature can still move us. In a world where many people train themselves to feel less, the Dharma gently trains us to feel more wisely, not sentimentally, not helplessly, but with awareness. For when remorse is guided by wisdom, it becomes compassion. When regret is guided by humility, it becomes moral strength. When sorrow is guided by the Dharma, it becomes a vow. May I not harm so easily again. May my words bring peace. May my hands protect life. May my presence become safer for others. May I remember before I act, not only after. This is the noble turning point. The past cannot be undone, but the heart can be transformed. The action has already left its mark, but the next action is still in our hands. And each moment of mindfulness, each sincere apology, each act of kindness, each restraint from harm, becomes a new seed planted in the field of life. So if your heart has ever trembled after hurting someone, do not see only weakness there. See the beginning of awakening. If you have ever felt sorrow after harming a living being, do not dismiss it as foolishness. See the tenderness that the Buddha's path protects. If you have ever lain awake with regret, wishing to become better, know that this wish itself is a sign of wholesome roots. A hardened heart feels nothing and continues. A living heart feels, learns, bows and changes. And from this living conscience, faith in cause and effect becomes natural, because little by little, one begins to see that every action leaves a trace. And when one begins to see that every action leaves a trace, faith in karma no longer feels like a doctrine heard from afar. It becomes something intimate, something quietly observed in the movements of one's own life. We notice that a harsh word does not end when the sound disappears. It continues in the eyes of the person who received it, in the heaviness of our own chest, in the atmosphere between two hearts. We notice that a small kindness, though quickly forgotten by the world, can warm someone for a long time. We notice that when the mind repeatedly chooses anger, anger becomes easier to return to. And when the mind repeatedly chooses patience, patience slowly becomes a home. Karma, in the Buddhist understanding, is not a punishment sent by an unseen judge. It is not a threat placed over our heads. It is the natural lawfulness of life, the way causes and conditions unfold. Just as a seed placed in the earth does not become a tree by accident, our thoughts, words, and deeds do not simply vanish after they arise. They shape the heart. They form tendencies. They influence the path ahead. What we think again and again becomes the climate of our mind. What we say again and again becomes the fragrance or bitterness of our presence. What we do again and again becomes the direction of our life. A person with wholesome roots may not understand the full depth of karma. At first, they may not know the scriptures. They may not be able to explain subtle teachings about rebirth, consciousness, or dependent arising. But somewhere within, they feel that life is not random. They feel that goodness has meaning, even when no one praises it. They feel that wrongdoing has consequences, even when no one discovers it. They cannot easily comfort themselves with the thought, "No one saw, so it does not matter," because deep inside, they know that the mind saw, the heart recorded it, the stream of life received that cause. This is why faith in karma changes a person's daily conduct in quiet, practical ways. It does not always make them dramatic or outwardly religious. More often, it makes them careful. They become careful with their speech because they understand words heal or wound. Before speaking, they begin to ask, "Is this true? Is this necessary? Is this kind? Will this bring peace, or will it add fire to fire?" They may still make mistakes because old habits are strong, but there is a growing pause before reaction. In that pause, a new future is possible. They become more honest in hidden places, not because they fear being caught, but because they respect the invisible field of cause and effect. When no one is looking, they still try to do what is right. If they find something that does not belong to them, they feel uneasy keeping it. If they are tempted to deceive, they sense that even a small lie can disturb the clarity of the mind. If they make a promise, they try to honor it, because they know trust is a sacred thing. Once broken, it may be repaired, but the crack teaches its own lesson. Belief in karma also makes a person more patient when wronged. This does not mean they become passive or allow others to harm them endlessly. Wisdom is not weakness, but they begin to understand that responding to harm with more harm only continues the chain. If someone insults them, they may feel pain, but they try not to throw the same poison back. If someone betrays them, they may step away, they may protect themselves, but they do not wish to destroy the other person. They know that every being is already walking with the results of their own actions. They know that hatred, when held tightly, first burns the one who carries it, and so they learn restraint. Restraint is not suppression in the cold sense. It is not pretending to be peaceful while storms rage unseen. Restraint is the noble courage to not feed what will later bring suffering. When desire rises recklessly, they remember that pleasure without mindfulness can become bondage. When greed whispers, they remember that taking more than one needs creates hunger that is never satisfied. When envy appears, they remember that another person's blessing does not steal their own destiny. When pride swells, they remember that all beauty, wealth, status, and strength are impermanent, like dew under the morning sun. To trust karma is to trust that nothing truly disappears. A thought of compassion matters. A bowl of rice offered with sincerity matters. A moment of silence instead of an angry reply matters. A secret act of generosity matters. A prayer whispered in the dark matters. Even a sincere wish to become better matters. These are not small things in the field of the heart. They are seeds. And though some seeds sprout quickly while others sleep beneath the soil for a long time, none are meaningless. This understanding naturally leads to reverence for the wise. When we see that actions bear fruit, we begin to look carefully at those whose lives have produced peace. We begin to ask, what causes did they plant? What habits did they cultivate? What did they give up? What did they protect in their hearts? The sages, saints, monks, nuns, bodhisattvas, and noble teachers are not respected because they demand worship. They are respected because their lives reveal the possibility of another way of being. Their gentleness is not accidental. Their clarity is not accidental. Their compassion did not appear without discipline. Their freedom was not born from indulgence, but from seeing deeply and practicing sincerely. To follow the wise does not mean to become blind. The Buddha himself encouraged inquiry, reflection, and personal verification. A person with wholesome roots does not abandon intelligence in the name of faith. Rather, they use intelligence in the service of awakening. They listen to noble teachings and observe whether those teachings reduce greed, hatred, and delusion. They look at the conduct of teachers, not merely their words. They respect those who live humbly, who do not exploit others, who embody patience, compassion, and restraint. They understand that true wisdom does not make a person arrogant. True wisdom makes a person more human, more tender, more responsible. The wise remind us that the spiritual path is not built only from beautiful feelings. It is built from daily choices. It is built when we refrain from harming, even when harming would be easy. It is built when we speak truthfully, even when a lie would bring advantage. It is built when we cultivate gratitude, even during seasons when life feels incomplete. It is built when we support our parents and elders, not merely with money or duty, but with patience, respect, and remembrance. For those who raised us, taught us, protected us, or simply endured life before us carry stories that deserve tenderness. To care for them is also to care for our own roots. The wise teach us to help those in need, not with superiority, but with humility. Today we may be the giver. Tomorrow we may be the one who needs a hand. When we give food, clothing, medicine, time, attention, forgiveness, or encouragement, we loosen the knot of self-centeredness. We remember that our life is connected to countless lives. The breath in our lungs depends on trees. The food on our table depends on earth, rain, farmers, animals, sunlight, and labor. The road we walk was made by hands we may never know. Seeing this, generosity becomes natural. It is not only charity, it is truth expressed through action. The wise also teach us to meditate, even if only for a few minutes each day. To sit quietly and watch the breath is to return to the place where karma is being formed. Before words, before actions, there is intention. Before intention, there is a movement in the mind. Meditation helps us see that movement. We begin to notice anger before it becomes speech. We begin to notice craving before it becomes action. We begin to notice fear before it becomes cruelty. In that noticing, freedom begins. We no longer have to obey every impulse. We can bow to the breath, return to the body, and choose with greater care. Some are drawn to reciting sacred names, the name of the Buddha, the name of Amitabha, the name of Avalokiteshvara, or simple verses of refuge and compassion. To an outside ear, repetition may seem ordinary, but for the faithful heart, each recitation is like placing the mind back into clean water. The name becomes a bell. It interrupts wandering. It softens loneliness. It steadies fear. It reminds the practitioner, do not be swallowed by this moment. Remember the awakened ones. Remember compassion. Remember the path. Even if the mind wanders 1,000 times, returning 1,000 times becomes a powerful cause. Another practice inspired by the wise is to examine one's motives before acting. This is subtle and beautiful discipline. Two people may perform the same outward action, but the inner seed may be different. One may give in order to be praised. Another may give because suffering moved their heart. One may speak truth to humiliate. Another may speak truth to protect. One may practice religion to appear superior. Another may practice because they sincerely wish to be free from ignorance. Karma is deeply connected with intention, so the person with wholesome roots learns to ask, why am I doing this? Is there greed here? Is there resentment? Is there compassion? Is there wisdom? This self-examination is not meant to create constant guilt. It is meant to create honesty. The path does not ask us to pretend that we are already pure. It asks us to see clearly, and seeing clearly is an act of mercy. When we discover selfishness, we do not need to hate ourselves. We can simply recognize it and plant a better seed. When we discover jealousy, we can breathe and practice rejoicing in others' happiness. When we discover anger, we can hold it with mindfulness and refuse to turn it into cruelty. When we discover fear, we can offer ourselves patience. In this way, karma becomes not a prison, but a path of transformation. A person who trusts karma and walks with the wise gradually becomes less careless with life. They understand that the future is not created only in great ceremonies or dramatic decisions. It is created while washing dishes, answering a message, earning a living, speaking to a child, caring for an animal, meeting an enemy, spending money, using power, or sitting alone with one's thoughts. Every ordinary moment is a doorway. Every ordinary moment asks, what kind of seed will you plant now? And this is why belief in karma is such a strong sign of a soul ripening toward the Buddha's path. That the person is beginning to live with moral sensitivity. They are no longer satisfied with appearances alone. They want their inner life to become clean. They want their actions to be worthy of peace. They feel reverence for those who have walked before them and left footprints of light. They may still stumble, but they no longer stumble unconsciously. They may still suffer, but suffering becomes a teacher. They may still have desires, but desire no longer sits on the throne unquestioned. In the presence of the wise, such a person feels both humbled and encouraged. Humbled, because they see how far the path extends. Encouraged, because they see that liberation is not fantasy. Someone has practiced, someone has awakened, someone has crossed storms of greed, anger, and delusion, and returned with compassion instead of bitterness. The Buddha was not merely an idea, but a living being who realized the deathless truth. The Dharma is not merely a philosophy, but medicine for the burning heart. The Sangha is not merely a community, but a field where sincere practice is protected and continued. When faith in karma matures, life becomes sacred in a very simple way. Not sacred because everything is easy, not sacred because pain disappears, but sacred because everything becomes connected to awakening. A difficulty becomes a chance to practice patience. A success becomes a chance to practice humility. A loss becomes a chance to see impermanence. A relationship becomes a chance to practice love without possession. A mistake becomes a chance to confess, repair, and begin again. Even death, when contemplated through the eyes of the wise, becomes not merely an ending, but a reminder to live now with sincerity. So if you find within yourself a deep trust that good and evil are not empty words, that actions bear fruit, that the teachings of the noble ones deserve respect, then cherish that trust. It is not a small thing. It is a lamp placed in the hand before the night road. It may not reveal the whole path at once, but it gives enough light for the next step. Walk carefully, speak gently, give when you can, restrain when you must. Bow to what is noble, learn from those whose lives carry peace. And when you fall, do not remain on the ground, plant a new cause. Take one more step, and when faith in karma and the wise ones deepens, the mind begins to remember the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha not only on special days, but every day. There is a woman who sells vegetables at a small market stall before sunrise. Her hands are rough from years of work, her days long and repetitive. Yet every morning before she lifts the first crate, she pauses in front of a tiny Buddha image tucked between baskets of greens. She does not chant for long. She simply presses her palms together, closes her eyes for a breath, and whispers a wish that her day bring no harm to anyone. No customer sees this. No one applauds it, but that brief private gesture shapes the rest of her day. How patiently she weighs each bundle, how gently she speaks to a tired old man counting his coins. Her shop has no altar room, no incense smoke rising in slow spirals, only a market stall and a woman who has not forgotten to remember. This remembrance is not always something grand or visible. It may not begin with long hours of chanting, or with robes, incense, and ceremonies. Sometimes it begins in the simplest way. A quiet bow in the morning before the day has fully opened, a breath taken with gratitude, a soft thought that says, "May I live today with more kindness than yesterday." Sometimes it is only a glance at a Buddha image on a small altar, or a line of teaching remembered while walking, working, cooking, driving, or caring for someone. Sometimes it is listening to a Dharma talk when the heart feels tired. Sometimes it is not speaking harshly when anger rises. Sometimes it is choosing compassion at the exact moment when pride wants to win. To remember the triple gem every day is to let the heart return, again and again, to its most wholesome direction. The world pulls us in many directions. It pulls the mind toward worry, desire, resentment, comparison, fear, and endless noise. One moment we are peaceful, the next moment we are disturbed. One moment we feel clear, the next moment we are caught in old habits. But when the wholesome root is alive within us, there is something inside that knows how to come back. It may wander, but it does not completely forget. It may become dusty, but it still knows where the clean water is. It may fall into confusion, but somewhere in the depth of the heart, the name of the Buddha still feels like home. The Buddha is not only a sacred figure from long ago. To those who remember him with sincerity, the Buddha is awakened compassion and awakened wisdom. He is the proof that a human being can go beyond hatred, greed, delusion, fear, and suffering. He is the image of a heart completely purified, completely free, completely vast. When we remember the Buddha, we are not merely looking outward. We are also remembering the possibility within ourselves. We remember that our mind, though troubled, is not hopeless. We remember that anger can be understood, craving can be cooled, ignorance can be illumined, and suffering can become the very ground of awakening. To think of the Buddha is to stand before a mirror of our highest potential. The Dharma is the path that heals suffering. It is not a doctrine meant only to be admired from afar. It is medicine to be taken, a road to be walked, a lamp to be carried. The Dharma teaches us how to see clearly, how actions create results, how attachment becomes pain, how compassion softens the heart, how mindfulness protects the mind, how wisdom cuts through illusion. When we remember the Dharma, we remember that there is a way to live that brings less harm and more peace. We remember that suffering is not meaningless, and confusion is not permanent. Every difficult moment can become a place of practice. Every relationship can become a mirror. Every loss can teach us to let go. Every breath can bring us back to the present. The Sangha is the community and the living example that supports the journey. Sometimes it is the noble disciples of the past. Sometimes it is monks and nuns who dedicate their lives to practice. Sometimes it is teachers who speak the Dharma with patience. Sometimes it is a friend who encourages us to be better, to be softer, to be more honest. Sometimes it is even a stranger whose gentle conduct quietly reminds us that goodness still exists in this world. To remember the Sangha is to remember that we do not walk alone. Others have walked before us. Others are walking beside us. Others will continue after us. When our faith is weak, their example strengthens us. When our discipline fades, their sincerity awakens us. When our heart feels lonely, their presence reminds us that the path is shared. And so, the 12th sign of one who carries wholesome roots in the Buddha Dhamma is this daily remembrance, not forced, not dry, not performed only for appearance, but intimate, natural, and deeply personal. The person may be busy with ordinary duties, may live among noise, may not have much time for formal practice, Yet the heart often turns toward the three jewels. In joy, they remember to be grateful. In suffering, they remember to take refuge. In confusion, they remember to pause. In anger, they remember restraint. In success, they remember humility. In failure, they remember impermanence. The remembrance becomes like a quiet thread running through the fabric of life. A person like this may not speak much about spirituality. They may not claim to be advanced. They may not see themselves as special. But in their daily choices, the triple gem is present. Before harming someone, they hesitate. Before judging someone, they try to understand. Before giving up, they remember patience. Before taking more than they need, they remember generosity. Before being carried away by pride, they remember the Buddha's humility. Before sinking into despair, they remember the Dharma's promise of transformation. Before isolating themselves in pain, they remember the Sangha, the great family of those who seek liberation. When we look back at all the signs, we can see that they are not separate pieces scattered across the path. They are like different flowers growing from the same root. First, there is that mysterious inner pull toward the Buddha's way, even before formal refuge, even before the mind can explain why. Something in the heart feels drawn toward temples, teachings, sacred images, wisdom. It is as if a door, long closed, begins to open from the inside. Then comes that trembling before the sound of the temple bell, the strange movement of the soul, when the bell echoes across space. The ear hears a sound, but the heart hears a call. For some it brings peace, for others, tears, for others, a silence too deep for words. Then there is respect for virtue, a natural reverence for those who live with integrity. The person with wholesome roots does not mock goodness. They admire those who are patient, honest, disciplined, compassionate, and selfless. They feel that moral beauty is more precious than cleverness or fame. Even when they cannot yet live fully like the wise, they know enough to bow before wisdom, and sometimes, even while still young, their heart already loves the path. While others chase only pleasure, attention, and gain, they feel drawn to truth. They ask deeper questions. They wonder about life, death, suffering, karma, and liberation. Their age may be young, but their inner seed is old. Humility also appears. Such a person knows how to listen. They do not always need to be right. They are interested in teachings, stories, verses, and principles that help them live better. They collect not only possessions but meanings. They treasure words that awaken conscience. They remember a phrase that touched them years ago. They may return to a simple teaching again and again, because each time it reveals something new. Along with humility comes gentleness. They do not enjoy conflict for its own sake. They do not feel proud when they defeat someone in argument. Their nature leans toward peace. Even when they must speak firmly, they prefer not to wound. Generosity is another sign. Their heart opens when they see need. They may not have much, but they know how to share. A little food, a little money, a little time, a kind word, a listening ear, a sincere prayer. These too are forms of giving they understand, even if only intuitively, that what is held too tightly becomes a burden, while what is given with love becomes merit. And from generosity flows compassion. They feel for people, for animals, for small lives easily ignored. They may feel tenderness toward trees, rivers, flowers, the sky after rain, the quiet dignity of the earth. They sense that life is sacred, fragile, and interconnected. To harm carelessly feels wrong to them, because their heart is not separate from the suffering around them. Then there is the quick release of anger. They may still get upset, because they are human. They may still speak wrongly, react too fast, or feel hurt, but they cannot carry hatred for too long. Something in them grows tired of bitterness. They may walk away angry, but later the heart softens. They may say, "Why should I keep this fire burning inside me?" This ability to let go is a precious sign. It shows that the soil of the mind is not too hard. And when they do harm, when they hurt a person, an animal, or even damage life carelessly, they feel remorse, not the kind of guilt that destroys the spirit, but the kind of remorse that awakens responsibility. They feel the pain of having acted against their own goodness. They want to repair, to do better, to become more mindful. And then they trust karma. They understand that life is not random in the deepest sense. Every thought, word, and deed leaves an imprint. What we plant, we will one day meet. This trust does not make them fearful in a narrow way. It makes them careful in a noble way. They know that kindness matters, honesty matters, restraint matters, forgiveness matters. They listen to the teachings of sages because they recognize that wisdom has been tested by time, suffering, and awakening. They may not understand every mystery of existence, but they trust that goodness is never wasted, and evil is never without consequence. All these signs gather into the final one, remembering the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha every day. Daily remembrance is like water given to the root. Without water, even a good seed may dry in the heat of the world. With water, it slowly grows. To remember the triple gem is to nourish the wholesome root so it becomes a tree of shade, fruit, and fragrance. It is to let the Buddha's compassion guide our eyes, the Dharma's wisdom guide our steps, and the Sangha's example guide our perseverance. If you already carry these signs, do not become proud, be grateful. A wholesome root is not a decoration for the ego. It is a responsibility of the heart. Protect it, water it. Let it grow through practice, kindness, humility, and sincere effort. Do not assume that because the seed is good, the harvest is guaranteed. A seed still needs care, faith needs practice, compassion needs action, wisdom needs patience. The path is not walked by emotion alone, but by daily choices, especially when no one is watching. And if you hear these signs and feel that you have only a few, or perhaps none at all, do not feel discouraged. The very fact that you are listening, reflecting, and wondering may already be the beginning of awakening. Wholesome roots can be planted, a heart can change, a life can turn. No one is forever abandoned by the possibility of goodness. Even a mind that has wandered for many years can return in one sincere moment. Even a person who has made mistakes can begin to plant new causes. The Buddha's path is vast enough for the latecomer, gentle enough for the wounded, and deep enough for those who have suffered long. May those who already have wholesome roots bring their good fruits to fulfillment. May their faith become wisdom, their kindness become great compassion, their practice become steady, and their lives become a blessing to many beings. May those who have not yet known the sacred path awaken soon. May they hear the bell of truth in whatever form life offers it. May they return, step by step, to the peaceful shore of the Buddha. For even if one lives 100 years in this world, if one never awakens to the path of truth, compassion, and liberation, one may still be sleeping through a precious human life. But to have even one wholesome root, one sincere wish for goodness, one moment of reverence for the Dharma is truly precious beyond measure. So tonight, or tomorrow morning, or in the next quiet breath, remember the triple gem. Remember the Buddha, who shows what the heart can become. Remember the Dharma, which shows the way out of suffering. Remember the Sangha, which reminds us that the path can be lived. And with that remembrance, return gently to your own heart. There, beneath fear and habit, beneath sorrow and restlessness, the wholesome root may already be waiting for the rain. If you find this useful, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment.